The cafeteria worker's hands are wrist deep in a senator's chest cavity when the first black SUV pulls up outside. She's not supposed to be here. Not supposed to know how to crack ribs like kindling, how to compress a dying heart with the kind of precision that only comes from doing it under mortar fire. The trauma team stands frozen, some horrified, some fascinated, as blood sprays across her scrubs, and she murmurs instructions that sound less like medicine and more like battlefield commands. Clamp, suction. Don't look at me like that, just move. When his heart kicks back to life, someone whispers what everyone's thinking. That's not a nurse. That's something else entirely. Then the doors slam open. Military. Not local police, not federal agents, operators in tactical gear with faces that say they've seen her before. Seen her die, actually. And suddenly, the woman nobody bothered to learn the name of becomes the only person in the room that matters. If you want to see how a ghost returns from the dead and destroys everyone who buried her, stay with me until the end. Like this video, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The overnight shift at Mercy General Hospital in Cedar Heights had a rhythm, and Maya Torres knew it by heart. 3 years of working the graveyard cafeteria meant she understood the BB and flow better than most of the nurses rushing past her station. Midnight brought the trauma cases. 2 a.m. was when the drunks got rowdy. 4 a.m., the code blues. And somewhere between the chaos, she restocked the coffee station and stayed out of everyone's way. Invisible. Forgettable. Exactly how she wanted it. She pushed the supply cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking against the linoleum. A pair of residents brushed past without a glance, deep in conversation about some procedure gone wrong. Maya kept her head down, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, the shapeless blue uniform doing its job of making her blend into the institutional walls. "Coffee's out in the physician's lounge," one of the nurses called out as Maya passed. "I'll get it," Maya said quietly. "Thanks, The nurse squinted at her name tag. "Yeah, thanks." No name, never a name. Just the girl who refilled things. Maya didn't mind. She'd worked harder to be nobody than most people work to be somebody. The automatic doors to the ER whooshed open behind her, and she heard the controlled chaos of a new arrival. Paramedics wheeling in a gurney, someone barking orders, the metallic smell of blood cutting through the antiseptic haze. Maya glanced back. Old habit, even though she'd trained herself not to look, not to care, not to remember what it felt like when seconds mattered and hands moved on instinct. 58-year-old male GSW to the chest, BP 70/40, and dropping. She turned away. Not her problem, not her world anymore. The coffee machine in the physician's lounge gurgled as she started a fresh pot. Through the window, she could see the parking lot, mostly empty except for a few scattered cars and the ambulance bay glowing under sodium lights. Quiet, safe, boring, perfect. She was replacing the sugar packets when Dr. Richard Vance walked in, all swagger and expensive cologne. Chief of surgery, 40-something, the kind of guy who thought his MD gave him the right to treat support staff like furniture. "About time," he said, not looking at her. "This coffee better not taste like burnt rubber again." "It won't," Maya said. He grunted, scrolling through his phone. "You know what your problem is? You people never pay attention to details. It's why you're stuck pushing carts while actual professionals save lives." Maya's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She'd heard worse, would probably hear worse again tomorrow. Vance grabbed his coffee and left without another word. She finished restocking in silence, that familiar ache settling in her chest, the one that came from swallowing words that wanted to claw their way out. 3 years of swallowing. 3 years of pretending she hadn't once been someone who gave the orders instead of taking them. The PA system crackled overhead. "Trauma activation, Bay 3. Trauma activation, Bay 3. Maya wheeled her cart toward the storage closet, but something made her pause near the trauma bay. Through the small window in the door, she could see organized chaos, doctors and nurses swarming around the patient she'd heard arrive minutes ago. The man on the table wasn't moving, wasn't breathing right, and the team around him looked wrong. She shouldn't look, shouldn't care. But her eyes cataloged everything anyway. The chest tube placement off by 2 inches, the resident's hands shaking as he tried to establish vascular access, the attending barking orders that made no tactical sense for a penetrating chest wound with that trajectory. "Someone page cardiothoracic," Dr. Vance snapped from inside. "And get me another unit of O negative. Move." The resident fumbled with the ultrasound probe. Maya could see the screen from here, free fluid in the pericardium, the heart struggling against the pressure. They needed to drain it. Now. Not in 5 minutes when cardiothoracic showed up, not after they stabilized him now, but they weren't seeing it. They were following protocol, checking boxes, doing everything by the book while the patient coded right in front of them. Maya's fingers gripped the cart handle. "Not your problem. Walk away." "Losing pulse. Charge to 200. He's crashing." She watched the monitor flatline, watched them scramble, watched Dr. Vance start compressions that were too shallow, too slow, the rhythm all wrong for someone with a chest wound and probable cardiac tamponade. 30 seconds of CPR. A minute. 2. "Call it," someone said. "Not yet," Vance snapped. "Another round of epi—" Maya's hand was on the door before she realized she'd moved. She walked in like she belonged there, like she had every right to be in a sterile trauma bay in her cafeteria uniform. The room didn't notice at first, too focused on the dying man, on the monitors screaming, on Dr. Vance's increasingly desperate compressions. Then she spoke. "You're doing it wrong." Every head turned. Vance looked up, sweat on his forehead, confusion flickering across his face. "Excuse me? Your compressions are wrong. You're not getting depth. You're not compensating for the wound cavity, and you're wasting time." Maya's voice came out flat, clinical. The voice of someone who'd done this 100 times in worse conditions than a clean, well-lit hospital bay. "He needs a pericardiocentesis. Now. Not later. Now." The room went silent except for the monitor's death tone. "Who the hell are you?" Vance straightened up, his face reddening. "Someone who knows what a cardiac tamponade looks like." Maya stepped closer to the table. "You've got maybe 90 seconds before brain damage becomes irreversible. So either do something useful or get out of my way." A nurse gasped. The resident's eyes went wide. Vance's jaw clenched. "Security! Get this woman out of—" Maya moved. She didn't ask permission, didn't wait for approval. Her hands were already on the patient's chest, finding the landmarks, the angle, the exact position where the needle needed to go. Someone tried to grab her arm. She shrugged them off without looking. 18-gauge needle, 60 ml syringe, now. "Don't you dare give her anything," Vance snarled. But one of the nurses, a younger woman with quick eyes, was already moving. She slapped the supplies into Maya's hand. "You're finished here," Vance said. "I'm calling—" The needle went in. Maya felt the resistance, the slight pop as it penetrated the pericardium, and then the dark blood filled the syringe. 30 milliliters, 40, 50. She drew it back slow and steady, depressurizing the sac around the heart, giving it room to beat again. The monitor hiccuped, then beeped, then showed a rhythm. "Oh my God," someone whispered. The patient gasped, his chest heaving, color returning to his gray face. Maya withdrew the needle, applied pressure to the puncture site, and stepped back. The room erupted. "How did you— That's not possible. Who trained you?" Maya looked at the patient, at his rising and falling chest, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pride, just the cold, empty ache of muscle memory doing what it was trained to do. Dr. Vance stared at her, his face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. "What the hell are you?" Before Maya could answer, the doors burst open. Hospital security rushed in, but they weren't alone. Behind them came 2 men in dark suits, government-issue earpieces, moving with the kind of controlled precision that said military, not private sector. They swept the room with hard eyes, cataloging faces, positions, threats. Then they saw Maya, and stopped cold. The older one, late 40s with a scar running down his jaw, went pale. Actually pale, like he'd seen a ghost. His hand drifted toward his hip, not aggressive, just instinctive, before he caught himself. "Clear the room," he said. His voice had the kind of authority that made everyone move without question. Nurses, doctors, residents, they all filed out, shooting confused glances back at Maya. Dr. Vance started to protest. "Now wait just a minute. I don't know who you think—" The second agent stepped into his path. Didn't touch him. Didn't threaten. Just stood there, a wall of silence. Vance left. The door closed. Maya stood next to the patient's bed, her hands still stained with blood, and waited. The older agent circled her slowly, like he was trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what he knew to be true. "Maya Torres," he finally said. It wasn't a question. "That's the name on my employee badge." "Your real name?" He stopped in front of her. "Captain Elena Reeves, serial number 847926614, formerly of the 75th Ranger Regiment, Joint Special Operations Command, medical specialty, combat trauma, decorated twice, disappeared 3 years ago after an IED attack in Kandahar that killed your entire unit." Maya said nothing. "You're supposed to be dead," he continued. "We buried you. Full honors. Your family got the flag." "They got a flag for a closed casket," Maya said quietly. "Not the same thing." The agent's jaw worked. "Why?" "Because someone wanted me dead, and I was too tired to find out who." She glanced at the patient, still unconscious but stable. "Looks like that didn't stick." "You just saved Senator Paul Hendricks." The agent gestured to the man on the table. "In front of witnesses, using techniques that no civilian should know. You understand what that means? It means I'm blown. It means you're exposed. Whatever you were hiding from just got a GPS lock on your position." He pulled out his phone, typed something fast. "We need to extract you. There's a safe house in—" "No." The agent blinked. "Excuse me?" I said no. Maya pulled off her blood-soaked gloves, dropped them in the biohazard bin. "I'm not running again." "Captain Reeves, that's not my name anymore." "Then what do I call you?" Maya looked at him, at the door where she could still hear people whispering outside, at the senator breathing steadily on the table. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of being nobody. And it all came apart the second she let herself care again. "Call me whatever you want," she said. "I'm done pretending I'm someone else." The agent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted. "We've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where someone already knows you're here." He showed her the screen, a news alert, already spreading on social media. Grainy phone footage from inside the trauma bay. Maya's face partially visible as she performed the pericardiocentesis, the caption reading, "Mystery woman saves senator with miracle surgery." "It's been online for 90 seconds, the agent said. 300,000 views already. Facial recognition programs are probably running right now." Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear. Fear was too simple. This was the weight of inevitability, of dominoes starting to fall. "How long before they find me?" "If they're looking, they already have." As if on cue, the lights flickered, both of them tensed. The agent's hand went to his weapon, and Maya found herself automatically scanning for exits, for cover, for anything that could be used defensively. Old training, old instincts, rising up like they'd never left. The lights stabilized. The PA system crackled. "Attention all staff. We have a mass casualty event. Multiple vehicles. Highway 74. ETA 4 minutes. All available personnel to the ER. Repeat, mass casualty event. All available personnel to the ER." The agent cursed. "You need to leave. Now. Before—" The doors opened. Dr. Vance stood there, flanked by hospital security and a woman in an expensive suit who radiated hospital administration. Behind them, Maya could see the ER filling up with staff, with patients, with organized chaos about to become just chaos. "I don't care who she is," the administrator said, her voice sharp. "She's not credentialed. She assaulted a patient, and she's fired." "That patient is alive," the agent said. "That patient is a senator, which means this is going to be a lawsuit nightmare." The woman pointed at Maya. "Security, escort her out, and I want her badge." Maya unclipped her badge, looked at the plastic rectangle with the terrible photo and the name that had never quite felt like hers, dropped it on the supply cart. "Fine," she said. The administrator blinked, like she'd expected a fight. "That's it? You're just leaving?" "You told me to leave. After what you did, I saved a life." Maya's voice was quiet, but something in it made the whole group take a step back. "That's what I did. Whether you want to call it assault or miracle or whatever else helps you sleep at night, That man is breathing because I knew what to do and I did it. So yeah, I'm leaving. Because you told me to. She started walking toward the door. The PA system crackled again. Multiple traumas inbound. GSWs. Blunt force trauma. 2 pediatric. Need all hands. Wait. Doctor. Vance's voice cut through the noise. Maya stopped. Vance looked at her, really looked at her for maybe the first time since she'd started working here. You said you know trauma. I said I know what a cardiac tamponade looks like. That's not what I saw. He glanced at the agent, at the administrator, then back to Maya. What I saw was someone who's done field surgery under fire, someone who doesn't hesitate, someone who... He trailed off, searching for words. Someone we need. Right now. The administrator's face went red. Dr. Vance, I will not have this hospital. 12 critical patients incoming. We're understaffed. Our trauma chief is in a conference in Baltimore, and our 2 best residents just started a 30-hour shift. Vance's jaw set. Fire her tomorrow. Right now, I need her hands. Maya waited. The administrator's phone rang. She answered it, listened, and her face went pale. The senator is awake. He's asking for the woman who saved him. Everyone turned to look at Maya. She stood there in her blood-stained cafeteria uniform, caught between the life she'd built and the life she'd left behind, with the sound of sirens getting closer, and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. The agent stepped next to her. You don't have to do this. Yeah, Maya said quietly. I really do. She walked back into the ER. The overhead lights caught her face, and for just a second, someone in the hallway with their phone out snapped a photo. It would be online in minutes, clearer this time, unmistakable. And somewhere, in some office or safe house or operations center, people who'd thought she was dead would see it, would know she was alive, would come looking. But right now the ambulances were pulling up. Right now 12 people were about to die unless someone knew how to stop them. Right now, none of the rest of it mattered. Maya grabbed a trauma gown from the supply cart, tied it on over her uniform, and pushed through the doors to the ambulance bay. The first patient came through on a backboard, a kid no more than 16 with a piece of metal sticking out of his abdomen. The paramedic rattled off vitals that said he had minutes, not hours. Bay 2, Maya said. Her voice had changed, no longer quiet, no longer uncertain. Command voice, battle voice. Get me a portable X-ray, 2 large-bore IVs, and prep for exploratory laparotomy. Someone page OR and tell them we're coming up. They just don't know it yet. A nurse gaped at her. We can and we will. Move. They moved. The second patient rolled in, then the third, then the fourth. Maya was suddenly everywhere, directing traffic, calling orders, her hands moving with mechanical precision as she stabilized spines, placed chest tubes, controlled bleeding. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, just acted, the way she'd been trained to act when the difference between life and death was measured in heartbeats. Dr. Vance worked beside her, and she could feel his eyes on her between patients, watching, analyzing, trying to figure out who the hell she really was. By the time the 8th patient arrived, a woman in her 30s with a crushed pelvis and internal bleeding that was turning her abdomen rigid, the ER had transformed into something resembling a combat surgical hospital. Organized chaos. Controlled disaster. She's not going to make it to the OR, the resident said, staring at the monitors. Then we do it here. Maya was already scrubbing her hands, her mind calculating angles, access points, the fastest way to get control of vessels she couldn't even see yet. Here? The resident looked around the ER bay, at the blood on the floor, at the lack of proper surgical lights. That's insane. That's war, Maya said. She made the incision, and somewhere outside a black sedan pulled into the hospital parking lot, its occupants watching the building with patient, predatory eyes. The woman on the table had maybe 3 minutes before her blood pressure dropped past the point of recovery. Maya's hands moved without conscious thought, fingers finding the landmarks through skin already swelling with internal hemorrhage. The ER bay wasn't an operating room. No surgical lights, no proper retractors, just harsh fluorescence and whatever instruments they could scrape together from crash carts. Scalpel, she said. A nurse, the same one who'd handed her the needle earlier, slapped it into her palm. No hesitation this time. No questions. The incision was fast and brutal, cutting through layers of tissue until dark blood welled up from the abdominal cavity. Maya didn't flinch. She'd done this in the back of transport vehicles with RPG fire overhead, had packed wounds while mortars shook the ground beneath her feet. A crowded ER was practically luxurious by comparison. Suction, more. Keep it clear. Doctor. Vance appeared at her elbow, his earlier arrogance replaced by something closer to shock. You can't operate here. This isn't... Then stop talking and help me find the bleeder. Maya's eyes never left the wound. Left hand. Retract there. Pull steady. He did. His hand shook slightly as he held the tissue back, exposing the mess inside. Maya worked through it systematically, clamping vessels, tying off arteries, her movements economical and precise. No wasted motion. No second guessing. Lap pad. Another one. Pack it tight. The resident watching from the side looked green. I've never seen anyone. Then watch and learn, Maya said. Because if you ever find yourself in a situation where the OR is too far and the patient is dying now, this is what you do. You don't wait. You don't panic. You just work. She found the main bleeder, a torn iliac artery pumping blood into the pelvis. Her fingers isolated it, clamped it, sutured it shut with quick practice movements that came from muscle memory so deep it bypassed thought entirely. The monitor steadied, blood pressure climbing, heart rate normalizing. Maya packed the abdomen with gauze and started closing, layer by layer. Get the OR ready. She needs a proper repair, but she'll make it there now. Someone started clapping. Maya looked up to find half the ER staff standing in a loose semicircle, watching her work. Some faces showed awe. Others showed fear. A few showed the dawning realization that whoever she wasn't just some cafeteria worker who got lucky. Show's over, she said flatly. We've got 11 more patients. Move. They scattered. Dr. Vance stayed beside her as they wheeled the woman toward the elevator. His voice was low, meant only for her. I need to know what I'm working with here. You're not some paramedic who took extra classes. You're not a med school dropout. Those are combat techniques. Battlefield medicine. Does it matter? It does when my ER just turned into a war zone and you're the only one who seems comfortable with it. The elevator doors opened. 2 orderlies took over the gurney and Maya stepped back, her trauma gown soaked through with blood. She peeled it off and dropped it in the nearest biohazard container. I was a soldier, she said quietly. A medic. That's all you need to know. Soldiers don't operate like that. Medics don't... He stopped, his eyes narrowing. You were special operations. Maya turned and walked away. Behind her, she could hear him calling after her, but the sound was drowned out by the PA system announcing another incoming trauma. She pushed through the doors back into the main ER, where chaos had evolved into something more organized, but no less desperate. The next 6 hours blurred together. Maya moved from bay to bay, patient to patient, her hands never stopping. A collapsed lung here, a ruptured spleen there, a tension pneumothorax that would have killed a teenager if she hadn't jammed a needle between his ribs in the hallway. The staff started deferring to her without being asked, residents looking to her for direction, nurses anticipating her needs before she voiced them. It should have felt good, should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like being naked under stadium lights. Every move she made was watched, every technique cataloged, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she could feel the clock ticking down. How long before someone connected the dots? Before the footage went viral enough to reach the wrong eyes? Before the people who'd tried to kill her once came back to finish the job? The agent, he'd said his name was Marcus Webb, stood near the security desk, watching her work while pretending to scroll through his phone. She caught his eye once, and the look he gave her was clear. You're running out of time. Patient 9 was a man in his 50s with a steering column through his chest. Patient 10 was a kid with burns covering 40% of his body. Patient 11 crashed twice before Maya could stabilize him, and when she finally got him breathing again, she realized her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from exhaustion, from the weight of saving people while knowing it was destroying the only safe thing she'd built in 3 years. Take a break, one of the nurses said, pressing a bottle of water into her hand. You've been going nonstop for 6 hours. I'm fine. You're swaying on your feet. Maya drank the water anyway. The ER had quieted somewhat. The critical cases handled, the stable ones waiting for beds upstairs, The dead respectfully covered in the far corner where the fluorescence didn't quite reach. 12 patients, 11 saved, one lost to injuries too severe for even her to overcome. She'd seen worse ratios. Didn't make the loss any easier. Captain Reeves. Maya turned to find Senator Hendricks being wheeled toward her, an IV pole trailing beside him, a nurse hovering protectively. He looked pale but alert, his eyes sharp despite the pain medication coursing through his system. "It's just Maya," she said. "The hell it is." He gestured for the nurse to stop the wheelchair. "I was briefed. After I woke up. After they told me what happened." He leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. "You saved my life with a technique they don't teach in civilian hospitals. You did it without hesitation, without authorization, and probably saved a dozen others tonight doing the same thing." "I did my job." "You did someone else's job. Someone trained by the military. Someone who was supposed to be dead." He paused, letting that sink in. "I asked them to pull your file. Want to know what I found?" Maya said nothing. Nothing, completely redacted. Black boxes all the way down. The kind of erasure that only happens when someone very important wants someone else to disappear. His voice dropped. "So either you're a ghost, or you made some very powerful people very angry." "Maybe both." "Then you should know. Those people are about to have a very bad week." He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and showed her the screen. It was a tweet from his official account, posted 20 minutes ago. "Tonight I died, and a hero brought me back. Her name is Elena Reeves. She's a veteran. And because of her, I'm alive to tell you that we don't honor our warriors enough. Full story coming. 10,000 retweets already, 20,000 likes, and climbing." Maya's stomach dropped. "You didn't." "I did. Because you saved my life, and I'm not going to let you disappear again." He gestured to the phone. "By morning, every news outlet in the country is going to want to know who you are. Which means whoever tried to bury you is going to have a much harder time doing it quietly. You just painted a target on my back. I painted a spotlight on it. There's a difference." He leaned back in the wheelchair, his expression fierce despite the pallor. "I've been in politics 30 years. I know how the game works. You can hide someone in the dark. You can't hide them when the whole world is watching." Marcus Webb appeared beside them, his face tight. "Senator, with all due respect, you may have just gotten her killed. Or I may have just saved her life." Hendricks met his gaze without blinking. "Your move, Agent Webb." Before anyone could respond, the ER doors burst open again. But this time it wasn't paramedics. It was reporters. 3 of them, cameras already rolling, microphones extended like weapons. "Ms. Reeves, can you confirm you're the woman who saved Senator Hendricks? Is it true you're former military? Where have you been for the last 3 years?" Security moved to intercept, but the damage was done. The cameras had caught her standing there in blood-stained scrubs, exhaustion written across her face, next to a senator in a wheelchair singing her praises. One of the reporters, a sharp-eyed woman with perfect hair, pushed past security. "The internet is calling you the ghost surgeon. Any comment?" Maya looked at Marcus, at the senator, at the cameras broadcasting her face to anyone watching. Then she walked away. She made it to the stairwell before Marcus caught up with her. The door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the noise of the ER, leaving just the echo of their footsteps in the concrete shaft. "This is bad," he said. "I noticed." "No, you don't understand. I just got word. Facial recognition hit on 3 separate watch lists. Interpol, DIA, and one I can't identify, which means it's probably off book." He showed her his phone displaying a series of alerts. "Someone very connected just learned you're alive, and they're moving assets." "How long?" "Hours. Maybe less." He grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly. "There's a car outside. We can have you in a secure location before—" "No." "Captain Reeves." "Elena," she corrected. "And I said no, I'm not running again." "Then you're dead. You understand that? The people who killed your unit, who bombed that convoy, who buried you under a false flag operation, they didn't do it for fun. They did it because you saw something, knew something, were about to expose something, and now you're back, and they're going to finish what they started." Maya pulled her arm free. "So let them try. This isn't bravery, it's suicide. It's making a choice." She leaned against the concrete wall, suddenly feeling every hour of the last 3 years pressing down on her shoulders. I've been dead for 36 months. I've watched people walk past me like I'm furniture. I've kept my head down and my mouth shut and my skills locked away because I was scared. Because I thought if I just stayed quiet enough, small enough, invisible enough, I could have some kind of life. You can. We can relocate you, give you a new identity. I don't want a new identity. Her voice cracked slightly, the first real emotion breaking through. I want my name back. I want the people who died in that convoy to be remembered as heroes, not collateral damage in some classified operation nobody talks about. I want the truth. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, you know what happens when you shine a light on classified operations that powerful people want buried? Tell me. They don't just come after you. They come after everyone. Your family, your friends, anyone who might have helped you. They burn it all down and call it national security. Then I guess I better make sure I win. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're one person. I'm one person who just saved a senator on live television. One person who the internet is calling a hero. One person who has information about a bombing that killed 12 special operations soldiers and got buried under so much red tape it might as well have never happened. She pushed off the wall, standing straight despite the exhaustion. You think they can make me disappear now? With cameras everywhere? With witnesses? With the whole world watching? Yes, Marcus said quietly. I think they'll try. And I think you're underestimating how creative they can get. The stairwell door opened. Dr. Vance stepped through, and behind him came someone Maya hadn't expected. A woman in a Navy uniform, commander's insignia on her shoulder, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd seen combat and come out harder for it. Captain Reeves, the woman said. Her voice was formal, clipped. I'm Commander Sarah Marks, Naval Special Warfare Command. We need to talk. Maya glanced at Marcus, who looked as surprised as she felt. About what? About why 12 operators died in a convoy that wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Kandahar. About the intelligence you collected in the 48 hours before that bombing. And about the 3-star general who authorized your unit's deployment to a location that just happened to be hit by an IED with surgical precision. The stairwell went very quiet. You knew, Maya said. We suspected. But we had no proof, no witnesses, no one willing to go on record. Commander Marks pulled out a tablet, tapped it, and showed Maya a screen filled with redacted documents. Then you appeared on national television doing battlefield surgery, and suddenly we have leverage. A survivor, someone who can testify. Testify to what? To the fact that your unit was sent to extract intelligence about a trafficking operation involving U.S. military assets. To the fact that someone very high up the chain of command wanted that intelligence buried. To the fact that the IED that killed your team wasn't Taliban, it was ours. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out beneath her. She'd known the attack felt wrong, had known it was too precise, too targeted, but hearing it confirmed, hearing that her people had been murdered by their own side. Who? The word came out strangled. We can't prove it yet, but we have a name, General Theodore Carlson, currently assigned to CENTCOM, previously overseeing logistics contracts in Afghanistan that funneled approximately $40 million through shell companies owned by the Jafari brothers, Maya finished. The memory hit her like a punch, sitting in a safe house outside Kandahar, her team leader going through files they'd seized from a Taliban compound, finding names and numbers that didn't add up. American names, officer names. We had the files, we were bringing them back. And someone made sure you never did. Commander Marks pocketed the tablet. Senator Hendricks is part of the Armed Services Committee. He has oversight authority. If you're willing to testify, if you're willing to go on record about what your unit found, we can open an investigation that even Carlson can't bury. And if I refuse, then you're still a target, but with no protection and no leverage. They'll find you eventually, and this time there won't be any witnesses. Maya looked at the three of them. Marcus with his warning, Marks with her offer, Vance watching it all with the expression of someone realizing he'd stumbled into something much bigger than a medical mystery. What do you need from me? She asked. Everything you remember, everything you saw, every name, every number, every shred of evidence your unit collected before the attack. Marks gestured to the door. But not here. Not exposed. We have a secure facility. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the stairwell in red. Marcus had his weapon drawn before Maya even processed what was happening, his body moving to shield her. Marks was on her radio immediately, her voice sharp. Status report. All units, status report. Static. Then a voice, crackling through the interference. We have a breach. North entrance. Multiple hostiles. Armed. Dr. Vance went pale. This is a hospital. They can't just... They can and they are. Marcus pulled Maya toward the stairs leading down. We need to move. Now. Wait. Maya grabbed his arm. The patients. The ER is full of critical cases. If there's a breach, if there's shooting, not our problem. It's mine. She pulled free and ran back through the door into the ER. The emergency lighting had kicked in there too, red and harsh, turning everything into shadows and blood. The staff was already moving, following disaster protocols, but they were civilian protocols, designed for fires and earthquakes, not for armed assault. Maya vaulted over the nurse's station and grabbed the PA microphone. This is not a drill. We have a security breach. All ambulatory patients move to the center corridors. All staff without critical patients start evacuation procedures. Critical patients stay where they are. We're not moving anyone on life support. A nurse stared at her. Who put you in charge? I did. Maya shoved the microphone into her hand. Keep them calm. Keep them organized. And lock the trauma bays. Anyone critical is safer behind closed doors than in the hallways. She didn't wait for agreement. Didn't have time. Marcus appeared beside her, Marks right behind him. You should have kept running. Probably. Maya grabbed a crash cart and started wheeling it toward the main corridor, building a barricade. Help me or don't, but I'm not leaving these people. For a moment she thought he'd argue. Then he started moving furniture, his training kicking in, building cover and concealment the way they'd been taught in tactical combat casualty care. Marks joined them, her movements efficient and practiced. The ER staff watched them work, confusion giving way to understanding, then to fear. What's happening? One of the residents asked. Someone very dangerous wants someone in this hospital dead, Mark said. So we're making sure that doesn't happen. Who? Maya met the resident's eyes. Me. They want me. Which means if you're smart, you'll get as far from me as possible. The resident didn't move. Neither did the nurses. Neither did Dr. Vance, who'd appeared in the doorway with a scalpel in his hand like it was some kind of weapon. This is my ER, he said. His voice shook, but his hand was steady. Nobody shoots patients in my ER. Maya almost smiled. Almost. Then the first gunshot echoed through the corridor, and everything went to hell. The sound of breaking glass came from the north entrance. Shouting, more gunshots, screaming. Marcus positioned himself at the corner, weapon ready, his face carved from stone. How many? Unknown, at least 4. Marks was on her radio again, calling for backup that might not arrive in time. Maya looked around the ER, at the patients trapped in beds, at the staff frozen in fear, at the makeshift barricades that wouldn't stop a determined assault for more than seconds. She'd spent 3 years hiding, 3 years being invisible, 3 years pretending she wasn't a soldier. That ended now. Get everyone into the trauma bays, she said. Her voice had changed again. Not the quiet cafeteria worker, not the exhausted surgeon, but the combat medic who'd run toward gunfire because her people needed her. Lock the doors. Barricade them. Don't come out until you hear all clear from law enforcement, not from anyone else. What about you? Dr. Vance asked. I'm going to give them what they came for. She walked toward the corridor where the gunfire was getting closer, and Marcus grabbed her shoulder. That's suicide. That's drawing them away from civilians. Maya pulled free. You coming or not? He cursed, but he followed. So did Marks. They moved through the darkened hospital corridors like a tactical unit. Maya in the lead because she knew the layout. Marcus and Marks flanking her with weapons drawn. The emergency lighting turned everything into a horror movie. Long shadows, red light, the sound of distant screaming mixing with gunfire. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 2 men in tactical gear, rifles raised. The men saw Maya and froze, just for a second, just long enough for shock to register on their faces. Target acquired, one of them said into his radio. North Corridor, Section B. Marcus shot him. The second man swung his rifle toward them, and Marks put 2 rounds center mass before he could fire. Both men went down hard, their weapons clattering across the linoleum. Maya stared at the bodies, at the blood spreading across the floor, and felt nothing. No horror, no guilt, just the cold calculation of a battlefield where the enemy had come hunting and found soldiers instead of victims. 2 down, Marcus said into his own radio. Need backup, need it now. More gunfire from behind them. Closer this time. They were being flanked. Maya pulled a fire alarm, and the sprinkler system activated, water cascading from the ceiling, turning the corridors into a slippery maze. It wouldn't stop anyone, but it might slow them down, might buy the staff time to evacuate. This way. She led them down a maintenance corridor, through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, into the guts of the hospital, concrete and pipes and the smell of industrial cleaning chemicals. Behind them, she could hear boots on tile, voices calling out tactical positions. These weren't random contractors or local thugs. These were professionals, military trained, equipped and coordinated, sent by someone with resources. How many people did you piss off? Marcus asked, reloading his weapon. Apparently the wrong ones. They emerged into a loading bay, and Maya realized their mistake immediately. No exits except the way they came, and a roll-up door that would take too long to open. They were trapped. Marcus and Marks positioned themselves at the entrance, weapons ready, faces grim. We can hold them for maybe 2 minutes, Marks said. After that, they'll have what they came for. Maya looked around the loading bay, at the medical supply crates, at the shelving units full of equipment, at the ceiling with its network of pipes and electrical conduits. Unless I give them something they're not expecting. What are you thinking? Maya pulled out her phone, the cheap burner she'd been using for 3 years, and opened the camera app. Started recording. My name is Captain Elena Reeves, she said into the camera. Her voice was steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the loading bay. Serial number 847926614. 3 years ago, my unit was wiped out in an attack that was reported as Taliban action. It wasn't. We were murdered by our own people because we found evidence of a trafficking operation involving U.S. military personnel. The files we recovered named names, high-ranking officers, people who had access to... The door burst open. 4 men in tactical gear poured through, weapons raised, moving with coordinated precision. They saw Maya with the phone, saw Marcus and Marks with guns drawn, and for just a moment, everyone froze. Then the lead man spoke. His voice filtered through a tactical mask. Put down the phone, Captain. No. We don't want to hurt anyone else. Just put down the phone and come with us. So you can bury me again? Maya kept recording, kept the camera pointed at their faces. So you can hide what happened to 12 soldiers who died doing their job? Not happening. The man's hand tightened on his weapon. You don't understand what you're dealing with. A conspiracy to murder American soldiers. Corruption at the highest levels. A cover-up that's lasted 3 years. Maya took a step forward, still recording. Oh, I understand perfectly. The question is, do you? Because right now this video is being uploaded to cloud storage, to multiple servers, to journalists and lawyers and senators. You can kill me, but you can't stop the truth from getting out. She was bluffing. The upload hadn't finished. Might not finish before they shot her. But they didn't know that. The lead man's radio crackled. A voice Maya didn't recognize, but that carried the weight of authority. Abort. Repeat. Abort mission. Asset is too exposed. Fall back. The tactical team didn't lower their weapons. Didn't move. Sir, the lead man said into his radio, we have the target. Requesting permission to... Permission denied. Exit now. That's an order. Maya watched emotions flicker behind the tactical mask. Frustration, anger, the calculation of someone deciding whether to disobey a direct command. Then slowly, the weapons lowered. This isn't over, the man said. I know, Maya replied. They backed out through the door, moving in formation, disappearing into the hospital corridors as quickly as they'd appeared. The loading bay fell silent, except for the sound of water still dripping from the sprinkler system. Marcus exhaled slowly. That was the stupidest, gutsiest thing I've ever seen. Did it work? Marks asked. Maya checked her phone. The upload bar was at 93%, 96. 99. Complete. Yeah, she said quietly. It worked. But as she stood there in a hospital loading bay, soaking wet, surrounded by two federal agents and the bodies of men sent to kill her, Maya realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't hiding, wasn't running. She was standing in the light, holding evidence that could bring down generals and expose classified operations with the whole world watching. And the people who'd tried to bury her were about to learn what happened when you tried to kill someone who refused to stay dead. The loading bay door rattled. All three of them spun, weapons and phones raised. But it wasn't the tactical team returning. It was hospital security, local police, and, impossibly, a news van with a camera crew already filming through the glass. They'd been broadcasting, the whole confrontation, every word. Maya's phone started buzzing, calls, texts, notifications flooding in faster than she could read them. Her video was spreading. The news was spreading. And somewhere in Washington, D.C., in offices with classified clearances and too much power, people were waking up to a nightmare they thought they'd buried 3 years ago. Marcus looked at his phone, then at Maya, his expression caught between horror and admiration. You just declared war on the entire military-industrial complex. Good, Maya said. Then the doors opened and the cameras rushed in, and Captain Elena Reeves, ghost, surgeon, soldier, survivor, stood in the red emergency lighting with blood on her scrubs and truth on her lips, while the whole world learned her name. The camera lights were blinding. Maya stood in the loading bay doorway, water still dripping from her hair, and watched as 3 news crews jockeyed for position. A reporter in a pristine suit shoved a microphone toward her face, asking questions she couldn't hear over the ringing in her ears. Marcus stepped between them. Back up. Now. Agent Webb, can you confirm this was an assassination attempt? Is Captain Reeves in federal custody? What can you tell us about the attack on Mercy General? Marcus didn't answer. He grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her through the crowd, Mark's running interference on the other side. They made it to a service elevator before the reporters could follow, and the doors closed on a wall of shouting voices and camera flashes. The elevator lurched upward. Nobody spoke. Maya's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She looked at the screen. Hundreds of notifications, thousands now. Her video had gone viral in the 15 minutes since she'd uploaded it. News outlets were already running segments. Twitter was exploding. Someone had created a hashtag, #JusticeForReeves. Turn it off, Marcus said. What? Your phone, turn it off. You're leaving a digital trail that anyone with half a brain can follow. Maya powered it down. The sudden silence felt wrong, like missing a heartbeat. The elevator stopped on the 4th floor. They stepped out into a corridor that had been cleared. No patients, no staff, just hospital security and 2 more federal agents Maya didn't recognize. One of them handed Marcus a tablet. What's the damage? Marcus asked, scrolling through whatever was on the screen. Bad. The video hit 2 million views in 12 minutes. Major networks are running it. Senator Hendricks is giving interviews from his hospital bed. And someone leaked the after-action report from the Kandahar bombing, the real one, not the sanitized version. Marcus cursed. How? Unknown, but whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. The leak includes casualty lists, mission parameters, and a memorandum from CENTCOM dated 2 days before the attack, rerouting Captain Reeves' unit to a location outside their operational zone. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. Let me see. The agent hesitated, glancing at Marcus. She's already neck-deep in this, Marcus said. Show her. The tablet displayed a scanned document, heavily redacted, but with enough visible text to tell the story. Her unit, Operational Detachment Alpha 574, had been assigned to provide medical support for a raid on a suspected Taliban weapons cache. Standard mission, low risk. Then, 48 hours before deployment, new orders came through, different location, different objective. Extract intelligence from a compound that wasn't on any official target list. The signature at the bottom of the memorandum was partially redacted, but Maya could make out enough letters to piece together the name. Theodore Carlson, Brigadier General, CENTCOM. He sent us there, she said quietly. Knew we'd find the files, knew we'd bring them back, and knew exactly where to plant an IED to make sure we never did. That's the theory, the agent said. But theory isn't proof. We need hard evidence, and the files your unit recovered were destroyed in the blast. Not all of them. Maya looked up from the tablet. We had protocol. Everything got backed up to encrypted cloud storage every 6 hours. Even in the field. Marcus and the agent exchanged glances. You have access to that storage? I did. 3 years ago. Before I went underground, I wiped my credentials, changed my identity, erased every digital footprint I could find. She paused. But the files should still be there, locked behind military-grade encryption and access codes that only my team knew. Your team is dead. Most of them, but not all. Maya's mind was racing now, pulling up memories she'd tried to bury. We had a tech specialist, Staff Sergeant David Monroe. If anyone survived and kept those access codes, Monroe was listed as KIA, the agent said. Body recovered, positive ID. Then he's the only one who could have leaked that after-action report. Maya gestured to the tablet. Because that document, it wasn't in the public domain. It was classified above top secret. Someone with access and motivation just handed it to the press. The pieces were falling into place now, ugly and sharp-edged. If Monroe was alive, if he'd been hiding like she had, then her appearance on national television wasn't just exposing her, it was exposing everyone connected to what happened in Kandahar. Marcus's phone rang. He answered it, listened for 10 seconds, and his face went white. When? He asked. Then, confirmed? A pause. Understood. He hung up and looked at Maya. General Carlson just died. Single gunshot to the head in his office at the Pentagon. Apparent suicide. The corridor went silent. That's convenient, Mark said. That's a cleanup operation. Marcus started walking, his pace urgent. They're cutting loose ends. If Carlson was involved, if he was part of a larger conspiracy, then his death means someone higher up the chain just decided to bury the evidence the old-fashioned way. By killing everyone who knows the truth, Maya finished, which includes you, Monroe if he's alive, and anyone else who might testify. Marcus pushed through a door into what looked like a converted conference room. Inside, more agents were setting up computers, secure phones, tactical gear. We're moving you to a federal safe house, tonight. No arguments. I'm not running. You won't be alive to make that choice if you stay here. He pointed to a chair. Sit. We need to debrief you, get everything you remember about Kandahar, and then we're putting you somewhere nobody can find you until this blows over. Maya didn't sit. It's not going to blow over. You said it yourself, they're cleaning house. Which means they're scared, which means we're close to something they can't afford to have exposed. All the more reason to hide you. All the more reason to push harder. She pulled out her dead phone, turned it back on despite Marcus's protest. You want evidence? I'll get you evidence, but I need to make a call first. To who? Maya didn't answer. She was already dialing a number she'd memorized 3 years ago and never used. A number that connected to a secure line that might or might not still be active. It rang twice. Then a voice she recognized, older and rougher, but unmistakable. This line is compromised. Hang up. Monroe, Maya said. Silence. Long enough that she thought he'd disconnected. Then, Wraith? The codename hit her like a physical blow. Nobody had called her that in 3 years. Nobody except the 11 operators who died in a fireball outside Kandahar. Yeah, she said. It's me. Jesus Christ, I thought you were dead. We all thought... He stopped, his breath ragged over the line. Where are you? Mercy General Hospital in Cedar Heights. And I'm guessing you're the one who leaked the after-action report. Had to. Saw you on the news, saw what was happening, knew they'd come for you. Figured if I dumped enough classified material into the public domain, it might slow them down. A bitter laugh. Didn't work, did it? Carlson's dead, suicide, they're saying. They're lying, he was murdered. Same way they're going to murder anyone else who knows what we found in that compound. Monroe's voice dropped. You still have your access codes? Yeah. Then we need to move fast. The files are still in the cloud storage, but they won't be for long. Someone's trying to scrub them. I've been fighting off deletion attempts for the last 2 hours. If we don't pull them down now, they're gone forever. Maya looked at Marcus, who was listening to the conversation on speaker. I need a secure computer, military-grade encryption, and I need it 5 minutes ago. Marcus pointed to one of the agents setting up equipment. Use that one. It's firewalled 6 ways from Sunday. Maya sat down at the terminal, her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced speed. Monroe talked her through the access protocols, layer after layer of security, each one requiring codes that only the members of ODA 574 would have known. The final layer required biometric verification. "It needs a fingerprint," Maya said. "Use mine." Monroe's voice was tight. "I uploaded my biometrics to the backup server before the attack. Should still be there." It was. Maya pulled up the stored file, applied it to the verification scanner, and watched the system process. Access granted. The screen filled with files, hundreds of them. Documents, photos, video files, audio recordings. Everything her team had pulled from that compound in the 48 hours before they died. Maya opened the first document and felt her stomach drop. It was a ledger. Names, dates, dollar amounts. U.S. military officers authorizing equipment transfers to shell companies. Those same companies selling the equipment to Taliban-affiliated groups. The money flowing back through accounts in Dubai, London, the Cayman Islands. $40 million. Maybe more. And the names at the top of the chain weren't just Carlson. They went higher, much higher. "Oh my God," she whispered. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, reading. His face went from pale to gray. "That's a sitting Deputy Secretary of Defense, and that's a Senate Armed Services Committee chairman." "They were selling weapons to the enemy," Maya said, "using military logistics to arm the same people who were killing our soldiers. And when we found proof, when we were about to bring it back, they killed you." Monroe's voice over the phone was hollow. "Killed all of us. Because 12 operators were cheaper than a corruption scandal that would bring down half of CENTCOM and implicate some of the most powerful people in Washington." Maya started downloading files, copying them to encrypted drives, sending them to multiple servers. Her hands moved automatically while her mind tried to process the magnitude of what they'd uncovered. "We need to go public with this," she said. "Now, before they can bury it again. You go public with that. And you're signing your own death warrant," Marcus said. "These aren't just corrupt officers. These are people with resources, with connections, with the ability to make problems disappear permanently." "Then I disappear permanently while telling everyone exactly who killed me and why." Maya pulled the first encrypted drive from the computer. "Get this to Senator Hendricks. Get copies to every major news outlet. Make it impossible to suppress." Marks grabbed the drive. "I'll handle distribution, but Marcus is right. You can't stay here. I'm not leaving these patients. The patients are fine. The hospital is on lockdown, security is doubled, and every news crew in the state is camped outside. Nobody's getting in without being seen." Marks moved toward the door. "But that protection doesn't extend past these walls. The second you step outside, you're exposed. So I stay inside." "For how long? Days? Weeks?" Marcus shook his head. "You're thinking tactically, not strategically. Right now you're a target. But if we can flip this, if we can get you in front of a congressional committee, on the record, with legal protection, how long does that take? 72 hours. Maybe less if Senator Hendricks pushes it through emergency channels." Maya looked at the computer screen, at the files still downloading, at the evidence of a conspiracy that had gotten 12 soldiers killed and had been buried under classification and lies for 3 years. 72 hours felt like forever. "Monroe," she said into the phone, "where are you?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't find me." "How long have you been hiding?" "Same as you. 3 years. Different name, different city, different life." His voice cracked. "I wanted to come forward. Wanted to tell someone, but I was scared. Thought if I just kept quiet, they'd forget about me." "They didn't forget. They've been waiting." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of it settle on her shoulders. "We both have. And now we're out of time. What do you want me to do?" "Whatever you were going to do before I called. Stay hidden. Stay alive. And if something happens to me, make sure these files get out." "Wraith." "That's an order, Sergeant." She hung up. Marcus was staring at her. "You just told him to run." I told him to survive. Someone needs to, in case this goes sideways." Maya stood up from the computer. "How's the download coming?" One of the agents monitoring the system looked up. 80%, but we're getting interference. Someone's trying to trace the connection." "Can they break through?" "Eventually, we've got maybe 10 minutes before they pinpoint this location." "Then we work fast." Maya turned to Marcus. You said congressional testimony. How do we make that happen? Senator Hendricks can request emergency testimony before the Armed Services Committee. Given the circumstances, given his personal involvement, they'd grant it. Marcus pulled out his phone. But it means you testify under oath, on camera, with every word entering the public record. No taking it back. No protection from perjury charges if you're wrong. I'm not wrong. Then you better be ready to prove it. Because the people you're accusing don't just have lawyers. They have entire legal teams dedicated to destroying witnesses. Maya thought about the last 3 years. Thought about serving coffee to doctors who didn't know her name. Thought about 12 soldiers who died following orders they trusted. Thought about all the times she could have spoken up and didn't because she was scared and tired and broken. Set it up, she said. Marcus made the call. While he talked to whoever was on the other end, Maya watched the files continue downloading. Each one a piece of evidence. Each one a nail in someone's coffin. Maybe hers, maybe theirs, maybe both. The agent monitoring the system spoke up. Download complete. We've got everything. Pull the hard drive, Marcus ordered. Wipe the terminal and get those files distributed before the lights went out. Not the emergency lighting this time. Everything. Complete darkness. The kind that only comes when power is cut deliberately and backup systems are disabled simultaneously. Maya's combat instincts kicked in immediately. She dropped low, moving away from where she'd been standing, her hands finding the edge of a desk for orientation. Around her she could hear the agents doing the same. Weapons drawn, movements controlled, breathing steady despite the spike of adrenaline. Sound off, Marcus said quietly. One by one, the agents called out positions. 5 total, plus Maya and Marks. 7 people in a dark room with no cover and 1 exit. This is a kill box, Marks whispered. She was right. The power hadn't failed. It had been cut, which meant someone knew exactly where they were and was moving to contain them. Maya's eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness. Faint light from outside filtered through the windows, enough to make out shapes but not details. She moved toward Marcus, found his arm, leaned close enough to whisper directly in his ear. We need to split up. Multiple targets, multiple directions, makes it harder for them to track everyone. And leaves you exposed. I'm already exposed, but those files need to get out. That's the priority. Before Marcus could argue, the door exploded inward. Not kicked open. Actually exploded, the lock mechanism detonating with a shaped charge that sent metal fragments spraying into the room. 2 agents went down immediately, caught by shrapnel, their weapons clattering across the floor. Then the shooting started. Muzzle flashes lit up the doorway like strobes. Maya hit the ground and rolled behind a desk as rounds tore through the space where she'd been standing. Marcus returned fire, his weapon lighting up his face in stark relief, and Marks was moving toward the windows, trying to flank. The tactical team that poured through the door was bigger than the one in the loading bay. 8 operators, maybe more, moving with coordinated precision that said Special Forces training. They weren't here to arrest anyone. They were here to eliminate a problem. Maya grabbed a fallen agent's weapon, a Glock 19, full magazine, and fired blind toward the doorway. Not trying to hit anyone, just buying seconds, creating chaos. One of the operators went down with a leg wound, and the others adjusted their formation, pressing the attack. East window! Mark shouted. Maya ran for it, keeping low, rounds chewing through the furniture around her. She hit the window frame and looked down, 4 floors up, parking lot below. No fire escape, no ledge. Jumping was suicide. So was staying. She fired the Glock until it clicked empty, then threw it at the nearest operator and grabbed a chair, swung it at the window. The glass shattered outward, and cold air rushed in along with the sound of sirens and helicopter rotors. Marcus appeared beside her, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. We're pinned. Then we make an exit. Maya grabbed his arm. Trust me. That's a 4-story drop. I know. She pulled him toward the window and jumped. The fall lasted forever and no time at all. Maya twisted in the air, trying to control the descent, and hit the awning over the hospital's side entrance hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. The fabric tore and she rolled sideways, momentum carrying her off the edge onto a dumpster below. Pain exploded through her shoulder. She rolled off the dumpster and hit the pavement, her vision going white, her body screaming that something was broken or dislocated, or both. Marcus landed beside her with more grace, his training showing, and hauled her to her feet. Move. Now. They ran. Behind them, the window they jumped from lit up with muzzle flashes. Rounds sparked off the pavement, and Maya heard someone shouting coordinates, calling in their position. The tactical team wasn't done. They were adapting, pursuing, determined to finish what they'd started. Maya's shoulder was useless, hanging at a wrong angle. Dislocated, not broken, but it might as well have been. She ran anyway, Marcus half dragging her around the side of the building toward the front entrance where the news crews were still camped out. We get to the cameras, Marcus panted. Get on camera. They won't risk. The black SUV came out of nowhere. It jumped the curb and cut them off. Doors flying open. More operators piling out. Maya tried to change direction, but her shoulder gave out, and she stumbled. Marcus put himself between her and the SUV, weapon raised, but he was outnumbered and knew it. Stand down, one of the operators said, clean voice, calm, professional. This doesn't have to get messier. You opened fire in a hospital, Marcus said. It's already messy. Collateral damage. Unfortunate, but necessary. The operator gestured to Maya. We just need the captain. Nobody else has to get hurt. You mean nobody else has to talk? Semantics. The operator raised his weapon slightly. Last chance. Step aside. Marcus didn't move. The operator's finger tightened on the trigger. And the news van screeched around the corner, camera still rolling, lights blazing. The reporter from earlier leaned out the window with her microphone like it was a weapon. Captain Reeves, are these men trying to kill you? The operators froze. Not out of conscience, out of calculation, because suddenly there were cameras, there were witnesses, there were thousands of people watching a live feed of federal operators pointing guns at a decorated veteran outside a hospital. The operator in charge lowered his weapon slowly. This isn't over. I know, Maya said. The SUV's doors slammed shut and it peeled away, leaving tire marks on the sidewalk. Maya collapsed against Marcus, her vision swimming, her shoulder a mass of agony. The reporter was still filming, still asking questions, and somewhere in the distance, police sirens were getting closer. Did we get the files out? She asked. Marcus nodded. Mark's made it. She's got the drives. Then it's done. It's not done. They're just getting started. He helped her toward the hospital entrance, where security was finally emerging, where the chaos was building toward something Maya couldn't quite see yet. You just humiliated some very powerful people on national television. They're going to come at you with everything they have. Let them. They made it inside. Dr. Vance was there, his face a mask of shock and anger, barking orders at nurses to prepare a trauma bay. Maya's shoulder was hanging wrong, her vision graying at the edges, and she could hear her own heartbeat too loud in her ears. I need you to reset my shoulder, she told Vance. You need surgery. I need it reset now. We don't have time for anything else. Vance looked at her like she was insane. Then he grabbed her arm, braced himself, and yanked. The shoulder popped back into socket with a sound Maya felt more than heard. The pain was transcendent, absolute, and then suddenly manageable. She gasped, steadied herself against the wall, and nodded. Thanks. You're welcome. Now get the hell out of my ER before someone else tries to shoot you in it. Maya almost laughed, would have if she had the energy. Marcus's phone rang. He answered it, listened, and his expression shifted from grim to something else entirely. What? Maya asked. Senator Hendricks just called an emergency session of the Armed Services Committee. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Capitol Hill. He looked at her. You're testifying, under oath, in front of Congress and every camera in the country. Maya felt something shift in her chest. Not fear, not relief. Just recognition that the next 24 hours would decide everything, whether justice happened or whether she disappeared permanently, whether the truth came out or whether it got buried under more lies and more bodies. Then I better get some sleep, she said. But even as she said it, she knew sleep wasn't coming. Not tonight. Not with the weight of 12 dead soldiers on her conscience and the knowledge that tomorrow she'd either destroy the people who killed them or become another casualty in a war nobody admitted was happening. Marcus started to respond, but his phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen and went very still. What is it? Maya asked. He showed her. A text message. From an unknown number. Just 4 words. Monroe is gone. Run. Maya stared at the text message, the words burning themselves into her vision. Monroe is gone. Run. Call him, she said. Marcus was already dialing. The phone rang once, twice, went to voicemail. He tried again, same result. Could be his phone died, one of the agents said, but his voice lacked conviction. Or they got to him. Maya felt something cold and hard settle in her gut. How long ago did we talk to him? Marcus checked his call log. 43 minutes. Boo. 43 minutes? Enough time to triangulate a signal, enough time to dispatch a team, enough time to make someone disappear. We need to assume he's compromised, Mark said. She'd appeared in the doorway, blood on her sleeve but the encrypted drives clutched in her hand. Which means they know everything he knew, including whatever he didn't tell us. Maya's mind raced through the conversation, analyzing every word Monroe had said, every hesitation, every detail. He'd been hiding for 3 years, same as her. He'd leaked the after-action report. He'd helped her access the files. And then, he said someone was trying to scrub the cloud storage, she said slowly, that he'd been fighting off deletion attempts for hours. What if he wasn't just defending the files? What if he was tracking whoever was trying to delete them? Marcus's eyes widened. If he traced them back to a source, then he knew who gave the order to kill us. New names we don't have yet. Maya grabbed his arm. We need to find him, now. We don't know where he is. He was smart enough not to tell us. But he wasn't smart enough to stay off the grid completely. Maya turned to the agent at the computer terminal. Pull up the call I just had with Monroe. Trace it. That'll take time. If he was using proper encryption. He was scared and rushed and calling from wherever he's been hiding for 3 years. People make mistakes when they're scared. Maya's voice was sharp, cutting. Trace it. The agent started typing. While they worked, Maya paced the small room, her shoulder throbbing with each step. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving exhaustion and pain in its wake. She'd been running on fumes for hours, operating on muscle memory and spite. But spite was a powerful fuel. Got something, the agent said. Signal originated from a cell tower in Riverside, Industrial District. That's about 40 minutes from here. So send the location to local FBI, Marcus ordered. Get a team there, and tell them to go in quiet. If Monroe's alive, we don't want to spook whoever's watching him. And if he's not alive? Marcus asked. Nobody answered that. Maya grabbed a jacket someone had left draped over a chair, wincing as she pulled it over her damaged shoulder. I'm going. The hell you are. Marcus stepped in front of her. You can barely stand. You've got a dislocated shoulder that needs medical attention, not field work. And you're testifying in front of Congress in 12 hours. Which is why I need to know what Monroe found. If he traced the deletion attempts back to someone, if he has evidence we don't, then the FBI will secure it. You're staying here. Maya met his eyes. People keep telling me what I'm doing, where I'm going, what's safe. Her voice was quiet, but carried an edge that made Marcus take a step back. I've spent 3 years listening to those voices. I'm done. She walked past him toward the door. Marcus fell in beside her. I'll drive. They took an unmarked sedan from the hospital parking garage, slipping out through a service exit while news crews were still camped at the front entrance. The streets were empty at this hour, dawn still an hour away. The city caught in that strange liminal space between night and morning. Maya leaned her head against the window, watching streetlights blur past. Her shoulder was a constant throb of pain, but she'd had worse. Had operated with cracked ribs, with shrapnel embedded in her leg, with concussion symptoms that made the world tilt sideways. Pain was just information. You acknowledged it and kept moving. You should know, Mark said, breaking the silence. Monroe wasn't the only one who leaked information tonight. Maya looked at her. Someone inside the Pentagon released personnel files. Yours, Monroe's, the rest of your unit. Service records, commendations, the works. Marks kept her eyes on the road. It's everywhere now. Social media, news sites, veteran forums. People are calling you heroes, calling for investigations. There are already protests outside the Pentagon. Protests won't stop them. No, but visibility might. Marks took a turn onto the highway. It's harder to disappear someone when millions of people know their name. Maya thought about the news cameras, about the footage of her jumping from a 4th-story window, about the text message warning her to run. Visibility was a weapon, but it cut both ways. The more people who knew her name, the more targets painted on her back. The industrial district was exactly what it sounded like. Warehouses and shipping facilities, chain-link fences and sodium lights casting everything in sickly orange. Marks killed the headlights as they approached, rolling to a stop 2 blocks from the cell tower location. Maya could see the FBI response team already in position. 3 vehicles, tactical gear, moving with practiced silence. They'd surrounded a warehouse with boarded windows and a rusted loading dock. "Stay in the car," Mark said. "Not happening." "Maya, that's my teammate in there, my unit. I'm not sitting this out." Marks cursed but didn't argue further. They approached the FBI perimeter, and the agent in charge, a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair, turned to face them. "Commander Marks, we weren't expecting you. Situation's fluid. What do we have?" "Heat signatures inside, at least 2, possibly 3. No movement for the last 10 minutes. The agent gestured to the warehouse. "Buildings registered to a shell company. No utilities connected, no recent activity. Perfect place to hide. Or perfect place for an ambush," Maya thought. "We're going in," the agent said. "Breach in 60 seconds. Maya watched them prepare, checking weapons, coordinating positions, moving with efficiency born of training and repetition. These were professionals, good at their jobs. But they weren't her people, weren't ODA 574, weren't the operators who'd learned to read each other's minds in combat. The breach team moved to the door. Something felt wrong. Maya couldn't articulate it, couldn't point to a specific detail, but every instinct she'd honed over years of combat operations was screaming. The warehouse was too quiet, too still, too perfect. "Wait," she said. The agent in charge glanced back. "Excuse me? Something's wrong. This feels like—" The warehouse exploded. Not the whole building, just the front section where the breach team had been positioned. A shaped charge, precisely placed, detonating with enough force to send the loading dock doors flying outward in a shower of splinters and flame. Maya hit the ground, covering her head as debris rained down. Her ears rang with the blast, and when she looked up, 3 agents were down, bleeding, stunned. The others were already moving, calling for medical, establishing a perimeter. But Maya's eyes were on the back of the warehouse, where a figure in dark clothing was climbing through a window. She ran. Her shoulders screamed protest, but she ignored it. The figure hit the ground and took off running, and Maya was 30 yards behind but closing. Her legs burned, her lungs ached, but she'd run longer distances in worse condition. The figure ducked between 2 shipping containers, and Maya followed without hesitation. She rounded the corner and nearly ran into him. Monroe. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, older, a scar running down the left side of his face that hadn't been there 3 years ago, but his eyes were the same, sharp and haunted and exhausted. "Wraith," he gasped. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. That was a trap." "I know," said it myself. He was breathing hard, his hands shaking. Had to make sure they'd come, had to confirm who they'd send. Maya stared at him. "You used yourself as bait." "Used us both." He pulled out a small device, a camera, she realized, something that had been recording. Got their faces, got their response time, got confirmation that the people trying to delete our files have access to FBI tactical protocols. "You're insane." "I'm thorough." He pocketed the camera. "And I'm running out of time. They know where I am now, know I'm alive, which means they'll escalate. Then come with me. We have protection. Protection didn't save our unit. Won't save me." Monroe's jaw set. "But I can make sure what we found gets out. Make sure it sticks." He pulled out a flash drive, pressed it into her hand. "Everything, all of it. The files from Kandahar plus 3 years of investigation. I traced the money, Maya. Followed it from the shell companies through accounts in 6 different countries. Found the smoking gun." "What smoking gun?" "A video. Recorded accidentally by a security camera in the compound we raided. Shows American soldiers loading weapons into Taliban trucks. Shows officers supervising. Shows General Carlson himself standing there, shaking hands with a known insurgent leader." Monroe's voice was hollow. "They weren't just selling weapons. They were coordinating with the enemy, trading intelligence for cash, and when we stumbled onto it, they burned us." Maya felt sick. She'd known it was bad. Hadn't realized it was this bad. That video needs to get to Congress, Monroe said. Needs to be on the record before they can suppress it. Then come with me. Testify. Put them all under oath. I can't. He looked past her at something she couldn't see. I'm too exposed, too fragile. But you're already in the spotlight. You're the face of this, the survivor, the hero. He smiled bitterly. Use it. Sirens were getting closer. FBI backup, or something worse. Monroe started backing away. Tell them what we found. Make them listen. Make them pay for what they did to our people. Where are you going? Somewhere they won't find me. At least not for a while. He paused at the edge of the shipping container. Wraith? I'm glad you made it. Glad someone did. Then he was gone, disappearing into the maze of industrial equipment and shadows. Maya stood there, clutching the flash drive, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Behind her, she could hear Marks calling her name, could hear the organized chaos of the FBI securing the blast site. She looked down at the drive in her hand. Such a small thing. Barely weighed anything. But it contained evidence that could topple generals, expose senators, rewrite the narrative of what happened in Kandahar. If she could get it to Congress, if she could survive long enough to testify, if the people trying to bury the truth didn't kill her first, the drive went into her pocket. She turned and walked back toward Marks, composing her face, locking down the emotions threatening to spill over. Was it him? Marks asked. Yeah. Is he alive? For now. Maya looked at the burning warehouse, at the agents being loaded into ambulances. But he won't stay that way if we don't move fast. They drove back to the hospital in silence. The sky was starting to lighten, dawn creeping over the horizon in shades of gray and gold. Maya's phone, powered back on, was buzzing constantly with notifications she didn't have the energy to read. By the time they reached Mercy General, the media presence had tripled. News vans from every major network, reporters doing live shots, protesters gathering with signs demanding justice for ODA 574. The whole thing had taken on a life of its own, spiraling beyond anyone's control. Marcus met them at a side entrance, his face grim. We have a problem. Add it to the list. The Pentagon released a statement. They're claiming your unit was engaged in unauthorized operations, that the bombing was the result of your own commander's negligence, that you're suffering from PTSD and your testimony is unreliable. Maya felt rage bloom hot and sharp in her chest. They're blaming the dead. They're covering their asses. And they have lawyers, PR firms, and friendly media outlets already spinning the narrative. Marcus gestured to his phone. It's everywhere. Rogue unit, tragic accident, survivor's guilt. Then we change the narrative. Maya pulled out the flash drive. Monroe gave me this. Says it has video evidence. Officers loading weapons for Taliban fighters. Carlson shaking hands with insurgent leaders. Marcus's eyes widen. That's treason, conspiracy, murder. Pick your charge. Maya pressed the drive into his hand. Get it to Senator Hendricks. Make sure it's ready to present at the hearing. If this is real, if it shows what Monroe says it shows, then a lot of powerful people are going to prison. Or worse. Maya's voice was hard. And they're going to fight like hell to make sure it never sees daylight. She was right. The next 6 hours were a masterclass in institutional pressure. Lawyers from the Pentagon called, demanding the hearing be postponed. Justice Department officials showed up with paperwork questioning the chain of custody for the evidence. News outlets ran hit pieces questioning Maya's mental state, her credibility, her motives. But Senator Hendricks didn't budge. At 8:47 a.m., Maya stood outside the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing room, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, her shoulder immobilized in a sling, her face pale from exhaustion and pain. The hallway was packed with cameras, reporters, protesters, veterans holding signs with the names of ODA 574's dead. Someone had made T-shirts with a ghost logo and the words, "We don't forget." Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a target with a countdown timer. Marcus appeared beside her. Ready? No? Good, means you're smart. He handed her a folder. This is everything, files, photos, the video Monroe provided. Hendricks will walk you through it, but be prepared. They're going to come at you hard, attack your service record, your mental state, anything they can use to discredit you. Let them try. The hearing room doors opened and Maya stepped inside. It was smaller than she'd expected, but more intimidating. Senators arranged in a semicircle, their faces ranging from sympathetic to hostile. Cameras everywhere, recording every angle. Gallery packed with press and public observers. Senator Hendricks sat at the center, still pale from his hospital stay, but upright and alert. He gestured to the witness chair. Maya sat down, the folder in front of her, her injured shoulder a constant reminder of how real this all was. Captain Elena Reeves, Hendricks began, his voice carrying through the room. Thank you for being here. I know this hasn't been easy. Nothing about the last 3 years has been easy, Senator. A ripple of reaction from the gallery. Cameras clicked. Hendricks leaned forward. Captain, can you describe for this committee what happened on August 14th, 3 years ago, outside Kandahar province? Maya took a breath. Then she started talking. She described the mission, the compound, the files they'd recovered, the orders that had come through at the last minute, rerouting them to a location outside their operational zone, the IED that had turned their convoy into a fireball. She talked about waking up in a field hospital, learning that everyone else was dead, being told she'd been medically retired and discharged, about the subtle pressure to accept the official story, to take her pension and stay quiet, about the day she realized someone wanted her to disappear, and she'd obliged by becoming nobody. The committee listened in silence. Even the hostile senators seemed affected, though Maya could see calculation behind their expressions. Then Hendricks opened the folder and pulled out the first photograph. Captain, can you identify this individual? Maya looked at the photo, a man in military fatigues, loading crates onto a truck. That's Major Richard Voss. He was logistics coordinator for CENTCOM operations in Kandahar province. And can you tell us what Major Voss is doing in this photograph? Loading U.S. military weapons into a vehicle belonging to the Jafari brothers, a known Taliban-affiliated group. The room erupted. Hendricks let it build for a moment, then called for order. He pulled out another photograph, then another, each one more damning than the last. Then he queued up the video. The screen at the front of the room flickered to life, showing grainy security footage from inside the compound. The timestamp was 3 days before the bombing, and there, clear as day, was General Theodore Carlson, shaking hands with a man identified in the subtitle as a Taliban regional commander. The audio was faint but audible. The next shipment arrives Tuesday. Same terms as before. The room went absolutely silent. Maya watched the senators' faces, watched shock give way to horror, horror give way to calculation. Some of them had known. Others were learning for the first time. All of them were realizing that this hearing had just become the biggest scandal in military history. A senator from the minority party stood up. Madam Chair, I move that we immediately refer this evidence to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation. Seconded, another senator said. All in favor? It was unanimous. Hendricks turned back to Maya. Captain Reeves, on behalf of this committee, I want to apologize for what was done to you, for what was done to your unit, and for the fact that it's taken 3 years and incredible personal risk for the truth to come out. Maya felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, opening. I don't want an apology, Senator. I want justice. You'll have it. Hendricks gestured to the gallery, to the cameras, to the whole world watching. I promise you that. The hearing continued for another 4 hours. More evidence, more testimony, more photographs and documents and recordings that painted a picture of corruption so deep and so extensive that it would take years to fully unravel. By the time Maya stepped out of the hearing room, the Pentagon had placed 6 officers under arrest. The Deputy Secretary of Defense had resigned, and the hashtag Justice for ODA 574 was trending worldwide. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. You did it! We did it! Maya leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling every hour of the last 72 hours. Monroe did it. The whole team did it. Monroe's in FBI custody. Turned himself in an hour ago. Said he saw the hearing and decided it was safe to come out of hiding. Maya closed her eyes, relief washing over her. Is he okay? He's alive. That's more than we had yesterday. Marcus paused. There's something else. The military is reviewing your discharge based on the circumstances, based on the evidence of wrongful termination and conspiracy. They're talking about reinstatement. I don't want to be reinstated. What do you want? Maya thought about the last 3 years. About serving coffee to people who didn't see her? About hiding her skills, her training, her entire identity because she was too scared to fight back? About the moment she decided to stop hiding? I want to train people, she said slowly. Want to teach battlefield medicine to operators who might need it. Want to make sure what happened to my unit doesn't happen to someone else because they weren't prepared. Marcus smiled. I think that can be arranged. They walked out of the Capitol building into chaos. Protesters cheering, reporters shouting questions, veterans saluting as she passed. It was overwhelming and terrifying and completely surreal. And standing at the edge of the crowd, wearing civilian clothes but standing with military posture, was Monroe. Their eyes met across the plaza. Maya walked toward him, the crowd parting without her asking. When she reached him, neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then Monroe saluted. Maya returned it. We made it, Wraith? Yeah, she said quietly. We did. But even as she said it, even as the crowd celebrated and the cameras rolled and justice started its slow grind toward accountability, Maya felt something cold settle in her gut. Because Marcus's phone was buzzing, and his face, when he answered it, went white. He hung up and turned to her. We have a problem. What now? The video. The one Monroe provided. The Pentagon is claiming it's fabricated. They've got experts saying it was digitally altered, that the metadata doesn't match, that it's inadmissible as evidence. Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet. That's impossible. Monroe pulled it directly from... I know, but they're getting ahead of it. Planting doubt. By tomorrow, half the news outlets will be running stories about deepfakes and unreliable evidence. Marcus's voice was tight. They're not going down without a fight. Maya looked at Monroe, at the crowd, at the cameras still recording everything. Then she pulled out her phone and opened a news app, scrolled to the contact section, found the number for the reporter who'd been covering the story from the beginning, the one with perfect hair who'd shoved a microphone in her face outside the hospital. What are you doing? Marcus asked. Changing the game. Maya hit dial. When the reporter answered, she said, I have something for you. Original files. Unedited footage. Complete chain of custody documentation. And I'm willing to go on camera right now to authenticate every single piece of it. The reporter's voice crackled with excitement. When? 1 hour. Your studio. And bring every fact checker you have. We're going to make this airtight. She hung up and looked at Marcus. They want to play dirty? Fine, but they're not the only ones who understand media strategy. By nightfall, 3 major networks had forensic experts verifying the footage. By midnight, international news outlets were running the story. By dawn, 7 more Pentagon officials were under investigation, and Congress had authorized a special prosecutor. Maya stood in her hotel room, watching the sunrise over Washington, D.C., and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she could breathe. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won out. Captain Reeves. The voice was unfamiliar, male, controlled. We need to talk. Who is this? Someone who knows the truth about Kandahar. The whole truth. Not just what you found in that compound. A pause. General Carlson wasn't the top of the chain. He was middle management. And the people above him? They're very interested in making sure you don't dig any deeper. Maya's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Meet me, tonight, Georgetown Park. Come alone, or don't come at all. But if you want to know who really gave the order to kill your unit, if you want to finish what you started, you'll be there. The line went dead. Maya stood there, phone in hand, staring at the sunrise. She'd won. The hearing was over. The evidence was public. Justice was in motion. But the voice on the phone had just told her the war wasn't finished. And somewhere in Washington, in an office with too much power and no accountability, someone was watching her every move, waiting to see if she'd take the bait. Maya told Marcus about the call. His reaction was immediate and predictable. Absolutely not. It's a trap. Obviously. Then why are we even discussing this? He paced the hotel room, his weapon visible under his jacket. You just testified before Congress. You've got evidence in the public domain. The investigation is moving forward. Walking into an obvious ambush achieves nothing. It achieves finding out who's really behind this. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, her shoulder still aching despite the painkillers. Carlson was middle management. You heard the voice. Someone above him gave the order. Someone still walking free while we celebrate partial victories. Partial is better than dead. Partial means they try again. Next month, next year. They wait until the media moves on, until people forget, and then they eliminate anyone who knows too much. She met his eyes. I didn't survive 3 years in hiding just to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Marcus stopped pacing. So what's your plan? Walk into Georgetown Park, ask politely who ordered the hit, and hope they confess? No, I walk in wired, with backup in position, and I get them talking on record. Maya pulled out her phone. We've already proven the evidence is real. Now we prove the conspiracy goes higher than anyone thought. And if they just shoot you? Then you make sure the recording gets out, same as always. Marks appeared in the doorway holding a tablet. We've got movement. 3 different law firms just filed motions to suppress the video evidence, all hired within the last 2 hours, all connected to the same private equity firm. Which firm? Maya asked. Redstone Capital Group. They've got contracts with the Defense Department worth billions. Logistics, private security, infrastructure development in conflict zones. Marks pulled up a document on the tablet. And their CEO used to be Deputy Director of Defense Procurement, guy named Lawrence Sterling. The name meant nothing to Maya. Was he involved in the Afghan operations? He approved the budget allocations, signed off on the contracts that Carlson was using to funnel weapons. Marks scrolled through more documents. If there's someone above Carlson in the food chain, Sterling's a strong candidate. Maya took the tablet, studying Sterling's photograph. Late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of man who looked respectable in Senate hearings and ruthless in private, the kind who could order 12 soldiers killed and sleep just fine afterward. Then he's the one who called, she said. You don't know that. I know someone with resources just tried to suppress evidence and offered to meet me in a public park. That's either arrogance or desperation. Maya handed back the tablet. Either way, I want to hear what he has to say. Marcus shook his head but pulled out his phone. I'll coordinate with FBI. Get a tactical team in position, surveillance, the works. But you're wearing a wire, you're carrying a tracker, and at the first sign of trouble, we extract you. Fine. I mean it, Maya. This isn't heroics. This is a controlled operation. I understand. She didn't mention that controlled operations had a way of becoming uncontrolled the moment contact was made. Didn't mention that the person who'd called her wouldn't show up unless they were confident in their ability to control the situation. Didn't mention that she was counting on them being overconfident. The hours before the meeting crawled by. Maya tried to rest but couldn't. Her mind kept circling back to Kandahar, to the compound, to the files they'd recovered. She'd been a different person then, younger, more naive, believing the system worked if you just followed the rules. 3 years of hiding had burned that naivety away. What remained was harder, sharper, less willing to accept comfortable lies. Monroe called around 5 p.m. You sure about this? Not even a little bit. Want me there? I can provide overwatch, just like old times. Maya smiled despite herself. No, you've stuck your neck out enough. Besides, I need you alive and available to testify if this goes sideways. It's going to go sideways. Question is whether you come out the other side. I always do. Until you don't. Monroe was quiet for a moment. Wraith? Whatever happens tonight, I'm glad we made it this far. Glad someone remembers what really happened to our people. We both remember. That's why we keep fighting. After she hung up, Maya stood in front of the mirror and studied her reflection. The cafeteria worker was completely gone now. What stared back was someone leaner, harder, marked by exhaustion and pain, but also by something she hadn't seen in 3 years, purpose. She'd been running for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand and fight. Wasn't sure she liked the feeling, but she wasn't backing down from it either. 6 hours later, Maya walked into Georgetown Park wearing jeans and a jacket that hid the wire taped to her ribs. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the paths and benches. Joggers passed by, oblivious. A few tourists took photos near the fountain. Maya chose a bench with clear sightlines, sat down, and waited. Marcus was 3 blocks away in a surveillance van. Marks was positioned in a coffee shop across the street, 4 FBI agents were scattered through the park in civilian clothes, close enough to respond, but far enough to avoid spooking whoever was coming, if anyone was coming. Maya checked her phone. 7:32 p.m. The call had said 7:30. At 7:34, a man sat down beside her. Not Sterling, someone younger, mid-40s, athletic build, moving with the controlled economy of someone military trained. He wore a suit that cost more than Maya had earned in 6 months as a cafeteria worker. "Captain Reeves, you're not the person I talked to on the phone. Mr. Sterling doesn't take meetings in public parks." The man pulled out his own phone, checked something, then pocketed it. "He sent me instead. My name is Thomas Garrett. I'm an attorney." "You're a cleaner," Garrett smiled without warmth. "I prefer crisis management specialist. But yes, essentially, I make problems go away." "Is that what I am? A problem?" "You're a complication. There's a difference." He leaned back onto the bench, completely relaxed. "Mr. Sterling wants you to understand something. The hearing was impressive, the evidence you presented, the testimony very compelling, but it's incomplete." "Incomplete how?" "You've exposed corruption in military procurement. You've implicated officers who took bribes and facilitated illegal weapons sales. That's all true, all verifiable, and all going to result in prosecutions." Garrett paused. "But?" "What you haven't found, what you can't find, is the systemic structure that made it possible." Maya felt the wire press against her ribs, recording every word. "You're saying it goes deeper. I'm saying it goes wider. Carlson wasn't a rogue general. He was following established protocols that have existed for decades. Protocols that involve congressional oversight committees, defense contractors, and intelligence agencies operating in jurisdictions where normal laws don't apply." Garrett's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "You think you've uncovered a conspiracy. You've barely scratched the surface. Then help me dig deeper." "That's not why I'm here." Garrett pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Mr. Sterling is prepared to offer you a settlement, full reinstatement to active duty with retroactive pay and benefits, a formal apology from the Pentagon, a memorial for your fallen unit members, and a position consulting for the new Military Ethics Oversight Board that Congress is creating." He handed her the envelope. Maya didn't open it. "In exchange for what?" "In exchange for accepting that you've accomplished your goal. Justice for your unit. Accountability for the officers directly responsible. A meaningful role in preventing future abuses." Garrett gestured to the envelope. "Everything you wanted when you first came forward. Except the truth. The truth is complicated and dangerous, and chasing it further will only get you killed." Garrett's tone shifted, losing the friendly veneer. "The people you're dealing with now aren't career officers taking bribes. They're individuals who've spent decades building power structures that span governments and corporations. They don't negotiate. They don't capitulate. They eliminate threats. Like they eliminated my unit. Like they'll eliminate you, and Monroe, and anyone else who tries to expose the full scope of what you stumbled onto in Kandahar." He stood up. "Take the deal, Captain. Walk away while you still can, because if you don't, the next team they send won't miss." Maya looked at the envelope in her hands, thought about reinstatement, about standing in a military uniform again, about the memorial for her team. Then she thought about the voice on the phone, about Sterling, sitting in an office somewhere, confident that money and lawyers and threats would make the problem disappear, about 12 soldiers who'd trusted their orders and died for it. "No," she said. Garrett paused halfway through turning away. "Excuse me?" "I said no. Tell Sterling he can take his settlement and his threats and shove them." Maya stood up, facing him. "I didn't testify before Congress to get a payoff. I did it because people deserve the truth, all of it, not the sanitized version that protects power structures and lets the real criminals walk free." "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." Maya pulled out her phone, opened the recording app, and showed him the screen. "And by the way, this entire conversation has been recorded and transmitted to federal agents currently surrounding this park. So you can tell Sterling that his attempt to obstruct justice just became evidence in a federal investigation." Garrett's face went pale, then hard. "You're dead. You understand that. Whatever protection you think you have, whatever visibility you think keeps you safe, it won't matter. They'll find a way. Let them try. He walked away fast, disappearing into the lengthening shadows. Maya sat back down on the bench, her heart pounding, and waited for Marcus to confirm they'd gotten the recording. Her phone buzzed. Got it. Clear audio. FBI is moving to pick up Garrett now. Another buzz. You just committed to a war you can't win. Maya typed back. Then I better make sure I don't lose. 2 FBI agents materialized from opposite directions, converging on Garrett before he made it to the park exit. Maya watched them take him down. Professional, efficient, no drama. He didn't resist. Probably knew it was pointless. Marcus appeared beside her bench, breathing hard like he'd been running. That was the stupidest, gutsiest play I've ever seen. Did it work? We've got Garrett on obstruction, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. His phone is already being analyzed, and Sterling just became a fugitive the moment Garrett confirms he was acting on his orders. Marcus sat down heavily. Yeah, it worked, but you just made yourself the primary target for whatever Sterling does next. He was already coming for me. At least now I'm ready. They walked out of the park together, Maya flanked by federal agents who'd gone from invisible to very visible. News crews were already gathering at the perimeter. Someone had leaked that Captain Reeves was meeting with representatives of the conspiracy she'd exposed. The cameras followed her to the unmarked sedan, followed her back to the hotel, followed her every move like she was the most important person in the world instead of just someone too stubborn to stay buried. The next 72 hours were chaos compressed into strategy sessions and legal briefings. Garrett's phone records revealed communications with Sterling, with Pentagon officials, with congressional aides. Each connection led to another, unraveling a network of corruption that stretched from Afghanistan to D.C. to corporate boardrooms across 3 continents. Sterling himself disappeared. Private jet filed a flight plan to Switzerland, but he never boarded. By the time federal marshals reached his estate in Virginia, it was empty. No clothes missing, no obvious signs of flight, just an expensive house that felt like a museum to wealth nobody was coming back to claim. He's gone to ground, Marcus said, standing in Maya's hotel room while she reviewed documents. Could be anywhere. Could have resources we don't know about. So we keep digging. Maya highlighted a section in the financial records. Follow the money, follow the communications, find everyone connected to this thing. That could take years. Then it takes years. She looked up from the papers. How many more soldiers die if we stop now? How many more units get sent into traps because someone's profiting from the chaos? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. The investigative team grew. What started as Maya, Marcus, and Marks expanded to include forensic accountants, military investigators, DOJ prosecutors, and congressional staffers. They worked out of a secure facility in Maryland, surrounded by whiteboards covered in names and connections, walls papered with financial records and communications logs. Maya became the center of it all. Not because she wanted to be, but because she was the only one who'd been there, who'd seen the files firsthand, who could connect tactical details to strategic corruption. She worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and spite, her shoulder still aching, but functional enough to type and point and draw connections between data points that others missed. You need to rest, Mark said one night, finding Maya still at her desk at 2 a.m. I'll rest when Sterling's in custody. You'll collapse before that happens. Marks pulled up a chair. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen dedicated investigators burn out, make mistakes, miss details because they're too exhausted to think straight. You're no good to anyone if you're running on empty. I'm fine. You're not, but you're too stubborn to admit it. Marks pulled out her phone, showed Maya a news article. Look at this. It was a profile piece. Not about the investigation, about Maya herself. Her background, her service record, her 3 years in hiding. The article painted her as a hero, a whistleblower, a symbol of integrity in a corrupt system. Maya hated it. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who didn't want my team to die for nothing. That's what makes you a hero to everyone else. Marks pocketed her phone. People need symbols. Need to believe that speaking truth to power actually works. You've become that symbol, whether you like it or not. I don't like it. Too bad, because right now you're the face of this investigation, which means you need to stay sharp, stay healthy, and stay alive long enough to see it through. Mark stood up. Go to bed, Captain. That's an order from someone who outranks you in this particular chain of command. Maya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders, and she knew Mark's was right. She slept for 4 hours. Woke to her phone ringing. Monroe's voice, tight with tension. Turn on the news. Maya fumbled for the remote, turned on the television in her hotel room. The headline made her breath stop. Redstone Capital CEO found dead in offshore account investigation. The report showed a crime scene in the Cayman Islands. Sterling's body discovered in a luxury villa. Initial reports suggested suicide, but the reporter's voice carried skepticism. Maya's phone rang again. Marcus this time. It wasn't suicide, he said without preamble. How do you know? Because I just got the preliminary forensics. Sterling was dead for at least 12 hours before his body was discovered. And the gun they found next to him? Ballistics don't match. Someone staged it. Maya felt cold settle in her stomach. They killed him. They eliminated a liability. Sterling knew too much, was too exposed, too likely to cut a deal to save himself. So they removed him from the equation. Marcus paused. Which means whoever's above him in the chain is willing to kill their own people to protect the conspiracy. Then we find out who that is. Maya, these people just murdered a billionaire CEO and made it look like suicide. They have resources we can't even imagine. Maybe it's time to— Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't tell me to back off. Don't tell me to be reasonable. Sterling's death just proved how deep this goes. Proved that stopping at Carlson, at Sterling, at any individual isn't enough. We need to burn the whole structure down. That's not a fight you can win. Then I'll die trying, but I'm not stopping. She hung up before Marcus could respond. The next weeks were brutal. With Sterling dead, the investigation lost its central target. Garrett refused to name anyone above Sterling, claiming he didn't know. Financial records led to shell companies that led to more shell companies, an infinite regression of corporate structures designed to obscure ownership and accountability. Maya pushed harder, interviewed more witnesses, analyzed more documents, built cases against mid-level conspirators, officers and contractors who'd facilitated the weapons trafficking, who'd known what was happening and profited from it. But the person at the top, the architect of the whole operation, remained invisible. Until Senator Hendricks walked into the investigation room with a file folder and a grim expression. I need everyone except Captain Reeves to leave, he said. The room cleared. Hendricks sat down across from Maya and slid the folder across the table. What is this? She asked. Something that's going to complicate your investigation considerably. He gestured to the folder. Open it. Inside were photographs, communications logs, financial records, and at the center of it all, a name that made Maya's blood run cold. Senator Margaret Voss, Armed Services Committee, 20 years in Congress, respected voice on military policy, and according to the documents, the person who'd authorized the procurement contracts that Carlson had used to funnel weapons to Taliban-affiliated groups. She was running it, Maya said quietly. The whole thing. Not running it, facilitating it. There's a difference, legally speaking. Hendricks pointed to specific documents. Voss didn't create the trafficking network, but she made sure congressional oversight looked the other way, made sure audits came back clean, made sure anyone who asked questions got reassigned or discredited. Why? Money, power, ideology. Take your pick. Hendricks leaned back. Voss comes from old defense contractor money. Her family's fortune was built on military procurement going back to Vietnam. When reforms threatened to cut into those profits, she positioned herself to protect the system. And when Carlson's operation offered a way to generate revenue while advancing certain strategic goals in the region, she enabled it. Maya stared at the photograph of Senator Voss. Distinguished-looking woman in her 60s, always impeccably dressed, famous for her passionate speeches about supporting the troops. She sent my unit to die. She signed off on the orders that put you in position to discover the trafficking operation. And when you did, she authorized Carlson to eliminate the problem. Hendricks's voice was heavy. Sterling was her intermediary, Carlson was her weapon, and 12 soldiers were acceptable losses to protect a system worth billions. Why are you telling me this now? Because Voss just requested a closed-door meeting with the Senate Ethics Committee. She's going to claim the investigation is politically motivated, that you're unstable, that the evidence has been manipulated by partisan actors. Hendricks met her eyes. She's going to try to shut this whole thing down, and she has the power to do it. Maya felt rage building, hot and sharp. When's the meeting? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I want to be there. You can't be. It's closed door, senators only, but Hendricks pulled out another document. I can call for an emergency open hearing immediately afterward. Put her on the record in front of cameras and the American people. If you're willing to testify again. I'm willing. It's going to be ugly. She'll have lawyers, she'll have allies. She'll attack your credibility, your service record, your mental state. Everything is going to be questioned. Let her try. Maya stood up, gathering the documents. I've been questioned by the best. I've been invisible, discredited, and hunted. But I'm still here, and I'm not backing down from someone who sent my team to die just to protect her profit margins. Hendricks smiled grimly. Then let's give her a fight she won't forget. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. the following day. Maya spent the night preparing, reviewing every piece of evidence, every connection, every document that linked Voss to the conspiracy. Monroe flew in to provide technical testimony. Marks assembled a presentation that laid out the financial trail in undeniable detail. Marcus coordinated with DOJ to have prosecutors ready to file charges the moment the testimony concluded. By noon, the Capitol building was surrounded by protesters and press. Word had leaked that Senator Voss was going to be questioned about her role in the Kandahar bombing. The same senator who'd spent 2 decades positioning herself as a military advocate. The same senator who'd given speeches at military funerals, including one for a soldier from ODA 574. Maya stood in the hallway outside the hearing room, watching the crowd through the windows. So many people, so much attention, all of it focused on whether one woman would finally be held accountable for getting 12 soldiers killed. Ready? Marcus asked. No, but we're doing this anyway. The hearing room was packed beyond capacity. Every seat filled, people standing in the back, cameras positioned to capture every angle. Senator Voss sat at the witness table, flanked by 3 attorneys looking calm and composed. Maya took her seat in the front row. Their eyes met across the room. Voss didn't look away, didn't show fear or guilt or anything except cold calculation. Hendricks called the hearing to order. Senator Voss, thank you for agreeing to testify today. I'm happy to clear up these baseless accusations, Senator. Voss's voice was smooth, practiced. This entire investigation has been driven by conspiracy theories and unreliable testimony from individuals with questionable mental health. Individuals like Captain Elena Reeves, who saved your colleague Senator Hendricks' life? Captain Reeves is clearly suffering from trauma. I sympathize with her situation, but sympathy doesn't make her accusations factual. Voss gestured to her attorneys. We have expert testimony from military psychologists questioning her reliability as a witness. And we have financial records showing you authorized the procurement contracts that General Carlson used to traffic weapons. Hendricks pulled up the first document on the screen. Can you explain this signature? That's a standard oversight authorization. I sign hundreds of similar documents every year. It doesn't mean I knew the specific details of every transaction. Even when those transactions involved $40 million being funneled through shell companies you have financial interests in, Voss's expression didn't change. I have divested from all companies that do business with the Defense Department. This is a matter of public record. You divested 2 months ago, after Captain Reeves' testimony became public. Hendricks pulled up another document. But at the time these contracts were authorized, you held significant equity in Redstone Capital Group, the same company whose CEO was found dead last week under suspicious circumstances. I can't speak to Mr. Sterling's unfortunate death. As for my previous investments, they were managed by blind trusts in full compliance with ethics regulations. Maya watched the exchange, watched Voss deflect and redirect, watched her attorneys interject procedural objections. It was masterful, frustrating, the kind of performance that had kept powerful people untouchable for decades. Then Hendricks played the video. Not the compound footage, something new. Security camera footage from a congressional office building, dated 6 months after the Kandahar bombing, showing Senator Voss meeting with General Carlson in a private conference room. The audio was faint but audible. The situation is contained. Reeves and Monroe are presumed dead. The investigation closed. Chirpus Carlson's response? The families are asking questions. The unit commander's widow wants an independent review. Voss, cold and clear. Deny the review. Threaten her pension if she pushes, and make sure the after-action report stays classified. Permanently. The room erupted. Voss's face went white. Her attorneys were on their feet, objecting, demanding to know where the footage came from, claiming it was obtained illegally. Hendricks waited for quiet. This footage was provided by General Carlson's personal security system, recovered during the investigation into his death. Chain of custody has been verified. Authentication is complete. This is a violation of senatorial privilege. There is no privilege when the conversation involves conspiracy to commit murder. Hendricks turned to the cameras. Senator Voss, you just heard yourself ordering the cover-up of an attack that killed 12 American soldiers. You heard yourself threatening a widow. You heard yourself conspiring with a general who we now know was trafficking weapons to enemy combatants. I was protecting classified information. You were protecting yourself, your profits, your power. Hendricks's voice carried across the room. Captain Reeves, would you like to respond? Maya stood up, walked to the microphone that had been set up for public comment. She looked at Senator Voss, at the woman who'd signed the orders, who'd authorized the cover-up, who'd threatened families and killed soldiers to protect a system that made her rich. I don't have much to say to you, Maya began. Her voice was quiet, but steady. You wouldn't care anyway. People like you never do. You see soldiers as assets, as resources to be spent and discarded. You see families as problems to be managed. You see truth as inconvenient. Voss's jaw tightened. But I want you to know their names, Maya continued. Staff Sergeant David Monroe. He survived, by the way, despite your best efforts. Captain James Torres. Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb. Specialist Derek Johnson. Corporal Amanda Price. Private First Class. She named them all. Every member of ODA 574. Every soldier who died because Senator Voss had decided their lives mattered less than her profit margins. The room was silent except for Maya's voice, methodically reciting names, ranks, ages, humanizing the statistics, making sure everyone watching understood these weren't just casualties, they were people. They were someone's child, someone's spouse, someone's friend. When she finished, Maya looked directly at the cameras. You sent us to die. You covered it up. You threatened families and destroyed evidence and thought you'd gotten away with it. But we're still here. We're still fighting. And we're going to make sure everyone knows what you did. She sat down. The hearing room exploded with noise, reporters shouting, protesters chanting, senators arguing. Through it all, Senator Voss sat frozen, her composure finally cracking. Hendricks called for order. Senator Voss, do you wish to make a statement? Voss looked at her attorneys, at the cameras, at Maya. Then she stood up and walked out. Her attorneys scrambled to follow, shouting about procedural violations and illegal evidence. But Voss kept walking, past the cameras, past the protesters, out of the Capitol building. She was arrested 3 hours later. The charges read like a crime novel: conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, wire fraud, weapons trafficking, violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, bribery, witness intimidation, and a dozen others. The prosecutors had built a case so airtight that even Voss's expensive legal team couldn't find cracks. The trial lasted 4 months. Maya testified 3 times. Monroe testified twice. They brought in families of the fallen soldiers, financial experts, military investigators. They presented hundreds of documents, dozens of recordings, witness testimony from officers who'd been threatened or silenced. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Senator Margaret Voss was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Maya watched the sentencing from the gallery, felt nothing except a quiet satisfaction that justice, however delayed, had finally arrived. After the trial, after the media attention started to fade, after the last appeals were filed and denied, Maya returned to Mercy General Hospital one more time, not to teach, to visit. Dr. Vance met her in his office. Captain Reeves, I wasn't expecting you. Just Maya. Maya, then. He gestured to a chair. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you. for testifying, for supporting me when it would have been easier to stay quiet. Maya sat down. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Vance leaned back in his chair. I spent 3 years treating you like you were invisible, like your skills and experience didn't matter because you were wearing a cafeteria uniform instead of scrubs. I was wrong, and when you gave me the chance to make it right, I took it. Most people wouldn't have. Most people aren't forced to watch someone they dismissed save lives in ways they couldn't. Vance pulled out a folder. I have something for you. Job offer. Chief of Trauma Surgery. Full credentials, full authority, competitive salary. Maya stared at the folder. I'm not a surgeon. I'm a medic. You're both. You have more field experience than anyone on my staff. You operate with precision we can't teach in medical school. And you have the kind of judgment that only comes from making life or death decisions under fire. He pushed the folder across the desk. This hospital needs you. The patients need you. Maya opened the folder, scanned the offer. It was generous. More than generous. The kind of position that would give her stability, respect, purpose. The kind of position she would have killed for 3 years ago. I can't, she said quietly. Why not? Because I'm not done yet. Maya closed the folder. The trial's over, Voss is in prison, but the system that enabled her is still there. The contracts, the oversight gaps, the culture that treats soldiers as expendable. Someone needs to fix that. And that someone is you? That someone better be me, because I know how it works. I know where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively, and I'm not going to let my team's deaths be the end of the story. I'm going to make them the beginning of real change. Vance nodded slowly. Then what will you do? I'm taking over the Military Ethics Oversight Board. Full-time position, reporting directly to Congress. I'll have investigators, lawyers, authority to audit contracts and operations. Power to stop the next ODA 574 before it happens. Maya stood up. It's not medicine, but it's the fight I need to be in. You're going to make a lot of enemies. Already have. Might as well make it count. She left the hospital for the last time, walking past the cafeteria where she'd once worked, past the trauma bay where everything had started, out into a world that finally knew her name. The ethics oversight position came with an office in the Pentagon, a staff of 20, and the kind of authority that made corrupt officers nervous. Maya threw herself into it with the same intensity she'd once applied to battlefield medicine. She investigated suspicious contracts, flagged procurement anomalies, testified before committees that tried to bury her findings. She built cases that led to prosecutions, policy changes, reforms that actually mattered. She made enemies, powerful ones, officers who saw oversight as interference, contractors who saw accountability as threat, politicians who profited from the status quo. But she also made allies, whistleblowers who'd been too scared to come forward alone, investigators who'd been shut down by politics, families who wanted answers about loved ones who'd died under suspicious circumstances. Together, they started to change things, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. 6 months into the job, Maya received a package at her office. Hand-delivered, no return address, just her name on plain brown paper. Inside was a combat medic's insignia, the kind worn by special operations soldiers, pinned to a card that read, "For those who refuse to let the dead be forgotten." No signature, but Maya knew who it was from. Knew Monroe was out there somewhere, living his own life, fighting his own battles, still carrying the weight of 12 soldiers who deserved better than they got. She pinned the insignia to her office wall, next to the photos of ODA 574, next to the silver star she'd finally been awarded, next to newspaper clippings from the trial. Reminders, not of what she'd lost, but of what she'd fought to reclaim. Her phone buzzed. Senator Hendricks calling. "Captain Reeves, I need you in committee room 418. We've got a situation." What kind of situation? The kind where a major defense contractor just won a $50 billion logistics contract despite red flags in their proposal. The kind where congressional oversight might have missed something important. The kind where we need someone who actually knows what to look for. Maya grabbed her jacket. "I'm on my way." She walked through Pentagon corridors with purpose, with authority, with the confidence of someone who'd earned the right to ask hard questions and demand honest answers. People recognized her now. Some nodded respectfully. Others avoided eye contact. A few looked at her with the kind of resentment that came from having their comfortable corruption disrupted. Maya didn't care about any of it. She cared about making sure the next unit sent into danger had leaders who valued their lives. Cared about making sure families got truth instead of sanitized lies. Cared about making the system work the way it was supposed to, protecting the people who served instead of exploiting them. In Committee Room 418, she spent 4 hours tearing apart a contract that looked legitimate on the surface but revealed itself as another scheme to funnel money through shell companies. By the end of the meeting, the contract was suspended, 3 executives were under investigation, and the committee chairman was thanking her personally. "You have a gift for this," Hendricks said as they walked out together. "I have experience being lied to. Makes it easier to spot lies. Still, you've accomplished more in 6 months than most oversight boards accomplish in years." He paused at the elevator. "The families of ODA 574 want to meet you. All of them. They're organizing a gathering next month. Memorial service, followed by a reception. They'd like you to speak." Maya's chest tightened. "I don't know what to say to them. Tell them what you told me. Tell them their loved ones mattered, that their deaths weren't in vain, that justice was served and changes are being made." Hendricks pressed the elevator button. "Tell them the truth. That's all they want." The gathering was held at Arlington National Cemetery, near the graves of ODA 574. Families came from across the country. Parents, siblings, spouses, children who barely remembered the soldiers they'd lost. Maya stood before them, feeling inadequate and overwhelmed, and tried to find words that meant something. "I can't give you back what you lost," she began. Her voice cracked slightly, and she didn't try to hide it. "I can't bring them back. Can't undo what happened. Can't make the pain go away." She paused, looking at the faces before her. People marked by grief and anger and the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting for answers nobody wanted to give. "But I can tell you, they didn't die because they made mistakes. They died because they did their jobs perfectly. They found evidence of corruption that powerful people wanted buried, and instead of being protected, they were eliminated." A woman in the front row, Captain Torres's widow, was crying silently. "I can tell you that the people responsible are in prison, that the system that enabled them is being reformed, that their names are remembered not as casualties, but as heroes who exposed corruption at the cost of their own lives." Maya's throat tightened, but she pushed through. "I can tell you that every day in my office, I look at their photos, and I ask myself, am I doing enough? Am I fighting hard enough? Am I making their sacrifice mean something?" She met their eyes, one by one. "And then I go back to work, because that's all I can do. Work to make sure no other family gets lied to, no other unit gets sacrificed for profit, no other soldier dies because the system values money over lives." She stepped down from the podium. Torres's widow approached her, and they stood there together, 2 women connected by loss and rage and the determination that it had to mean something. "Thank you," the widow whispered, "for not letting them disappear." Maya hugged her, this stranger who was somehow family, bound by grief and justice and 12 graves that demanded to be remembered. After the ceremony, after the families had dispersed and the sun had set over Arlington, Maya stood alone among the headstones. Monroe appeared beside her. They hadn't planned it, but somehow they both knew they'd end up here. "We did it," he said quietly. "Yeah. Voss is in prison. Sterling's dead. Carlson's dead. The whole conspiracy exposed and prosecuted." "Yeah." Monroe looked at her. "So why don't you look happier?" "Because it shouldn't have taken this long. Shouldn't have required us nearly dying, hiding for 3 years, fighting through courts and hearings and death threats." Maya touched one of the headstones. "They should have been protected from the beginning. The system should have worked." "But it didn't, so we made it work." Monroe's voice was firm. "And now, because we fought, because we refused to stay buried, the system's better. Not perfect, but better." Maya nodded slowly. "What are you doing now, after all this?" "Teaching. Military history, tactics, ethics, trying to make sure the next generation of soldiers knows how to recognize corruption and has the courage to fight it." He smiled slightly. "Turns out I'm decent at it. What about you, besides tearing apart Pentagon contracts and making generals nervous?" Same thing, just from a different angle. Maya looked at him. We're still fighting, aren't we? Just different battles. Yeah, but that's what we do. What we've always done. Monroe saluted the graves. For them, for everyone like them. We keep fighting. They stood together in the gathering darkness, two survivors of a unit that was supposed to disappear, refusing to let the dead be forgotten. Later that night, Maya sat in her apartment and opened her laptop. She'd been thinking about writing something, not a report, not testimony, but a record. Something that captured not just what happened, but why it mattered. She started typing. My name is Captain Elena Reeves. 3 years ago, I was declared dead. Today, I'm alive, and the people who tried to bury me are in prison. This is not a story about heroism. It's a story about what happens when systems fail, when power corrupts, when the people meant to protect soldiers instead sacrifice them for profit. But it's also a story about refusing to accept that failure, about fighting back even when the odds are impossible, about making sure the dead are remembered and the living are protected. I was a cafeteria worker, invisible, forgotten. Nobody. I chose to become somebody who mattered, not because I was special, not because I was fearless, but because I decided that some truths are worth dying for, which means they're definitely worth living for. She wrote for hours, pouring 3 years of pain and rage and determination onto the page. When she finished, she sent it to a publisher who'd been requesting an interview. The book came out 6 months later, became a bestseller, was adapted into a documentary, became required reading at military academies. Maya didn't write it for fame or money. She wrote it so that every soldier who ever felt expendable, every family who ever got lied to, every whistleblower who ever considered staying silent, they'd know it was possible to fight back and win. 2 years after the trial, Maya stood in a conference room at the Pentagon, briefing a room full of generals on new oversight protocols. The same building where people had once ordered her death. The same corridors she'd walked through while hiding her identity. Now she walked them with her name on her door, her rank on her uniform, and the authority to demand answers from people who'd spent careers avoiding accountability. These reforms aren't optional, she told the assembled officers. They're not suggestions. They're requirements backed by congressional mandate and enforced by my office. You will comply, or you will be removed. A 3-star general in the back shifted uncomfortably. Captain Reeves, with all due respect, some of these protocols are going to create operational challenges. With all due respect, General, I don't care. Maya met his eyes. Operational challenges are manageable. Dead soldiers aren't. If your operations can't function without violating ethics regulations, then your operations need to change. The room was silent. Any other questions? Maya asked. Nobody spoke. Good. Implementation begins immediately. You have my contact information if issues arise, but I'm warning you now, I will investigate every complaint, every irregularity, every hint that someone thinks they're above these rules. She gathered her materials. My team and I are very good at our jobs. Don't make us prove it. She walked out of the briefing and Marcus was waiting in the hallway with a smile. That was brutal. That was necessary. Maya checked her phone. What's next? Next is you actually take a day off, maybe 2. You've been working 70-hour weeks for 6 months straight. I'll rest when the job's done. The job's never done. That's the point. Marcus blocked her path. You've reformed procurement oversight, prosecuted corrupt officers, changed policy across the entire military. You've accomplished more than anyone thought possible. But you're running yourself into the ground, and that doesn't help anyone. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to say there was too much work, too much corruption still lurking, too many soldiers depending on her vigilance. But she was exhausted, bone-deep tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. Fine, she said. One day. But if anything urgent comes up, I'll handle it. That's what your staff is for. Marcus steered her toward the exit. Go home. Sleep. Do something normal people do. Read a book. Watch terrible television. Exist as something other than Captain Reeves, corruption fighter. Maya went home. Slept for 14 hours. Woke up disoriented and restless. She tried to relax. Failed. Ended up reviewing case files on her laptop until Marks called and threatened to confiscate her computer. You have a problem, Mark said. I have a job. You have an obsession. There's a difference. Marx's voice softened. Maya, I get it. I understand why this matters so much. But you can't save everyone. Can't fix everything. Can't fight every battle personally. I can try. You can burn out. And then you can't fight any battles. A pause. What would your team want? The ones who died? Would they want you destroying yourself in the name of honoring them? Maya didn't have an answer for that. That night, she dreamed about Kandahar, about the convoy, the explosion, waking up alone in a hospital while everyone else was dead. But this time, when she woke up, her team was standing around her bed. Captain Torres, Lieutenant Kim, all of them, looking at her with expressions that weren't accusatory, just tired. We're good, Torres said. You can stop now. Maya woke up with tears on her face. She didn't stop, couldn't, but she learned to pace herself, to delegate, to trust her staff to handle investigations while she focused on strategy and policy. She learned that honoring the dead didn't mean working herself to death. It meant building something that would outlast her, a system that actually protected soldiers instead of exploiting them. 3 years after the trial, the Pentagon hosted a ceremony, a memorial wall for ODA 574, their names engraved in granite, their service honored permanently. Maya stood at the unveiling, surrounded by families and veterans and officers who'd learned that accountability wasn't the enemy, corruption was. These 12 soldiers, she said during her speech, didn't set out to be heroes. They set out to do their jobs, to follow orders, to serve their country. They became heroes because they refused to look away from corruption, even when looking away would have kept them alive. She paused, looking at the names etched in stone. We honor them not just by remembering how they died, but by changing why they died, by making sure the system that killed them can never kill anyone else the same way, by refusing to let their sacrifice be in vain. The applause was respectful but subdued. These ceremonies weren't celebrations, they were acknowledgments of failure and promises to do better. After the ceremony, a young soldier approached Maya. Couldn't have been more than 22, nervous and earnest. Captain Reeves, I just wanted to say, I joined because of you, because of what you did, because you proved one person can make a difference. Maya looked at this kid, fresh-faced and idealistic, and felt the weight of it. She'd become a symbol whether she wanted to be or not. Young soldiers saw her as proof that speaking truth to power worked, that corruption could be defeated, that justice was possible. She hoped they were right. Thank you, she said. But remember, I didn't do it alone. Monroe helped. Senator Hendricks helped. Investigators and lawyers and families who refuse to accept lies. One person can start a fight, but it takes a lot of people to win it. Still, the soldier said, you started it. That matters. Maybe it did. 5 years after everything began, after the senator's chest surgery, after the congressional testimony, after the trials and reforms and endless battles, Maya stood in her Pentagon office and looked at the wall. Photos of ODA 574. The Silver Star. Newspaper headlines from the trials. Letters from families thanking her for not giving up. And a new addition? A photo from last month showing her shaking hands with the Secretary of Defense. The caption underneath read, Captain Elena Reeves named Director of Military Ethics and Accountability Oversight. Full authority, permanent position. The power to investigate anyone, anywhere, at any level of command. She'd spent 3 years invisible. Had spent 5 years fighting to be seen. Now she was impossible to ignore. Her phone rang. Monroe. Saw the news. Congratulations, Director Reeves. Don't call me that. Too late. It's official now. You're a bureaucrat. He was smiling. She could hear it in his voice. What's your first move? Maya looked at the stack of cases on her desk. Suspicious contracts in Eastern Europe. Procurement anomalies in the Pacific Theater. Whistleblower complaints from 3 different bases. Same thing I've been doing, she said. Find corruption. Expose it. Make sure the people responsible face consequences. Sounds like a full-time job. Sounds like the rest of my life. Good, Monroe said. The world needs someone like you in that fight. Someone who knows what it costs to stay silent and refuses to pay that price. After they hung up, Maya sat in her office as the sun set over the Pentagon, and she thought about everything that had led to this moment. The convoy in Kandahar, the explosion, the 3 years of hiding, the decision to fight back, the trials and testimony and battles that had consumed her life. She thought about 12 soldiers who should be alive, about families who deserved truth, about a system that needed people willing to tear it apart and rebuild it better. She thought about the girl in the cafeteria uniform who nobody saw, who nobody remembered, who decided that being invisible was worse than being at risk. And she realized something. She'd won. Not perfectly, not completely. There was still corruption, still battles to fight, still powerful people who wanted her silenced. But she'd survived, had fought back, had made the system accountable when it tried to bury her, had turned from nobody into somebody who mattered. And that impossible transformation from invisible to undeniable, from victim to victor, from silence to testimony that echoed through Congress and courtrooms and military academies, that was the real victory. Not revenge, not even justice, though justice had been served. The victory was choosing to fight it all, was refusing to let fear win, was standing up and saying, I matter, my team matters, the truth matters, and I will not be silent. Maya Torres, Elena Reeves, had been dead for 3 years, had come back to life and burned down the people who'd killed her, had rebuilt herself into something stronger, fiercer, impossible to kill or silence or ignore. She was nobody, and then she was somebody who changed everything, and that, in the end, was the only truth that mattered.